Hello there everyone, welcome to Cryptocorps. I am your storyteller and I am here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Thomas Brennan, but everyone calls me Tom. I'm 45 years old and used to be a detective in Chicago. Now I'm standing at the edge of what looks like the middle of nowhere, a logging camp called Cedar Ridge in northern Minnesota. The company hired me to be the new foreman and get this place running again after it's been empty for 15 years. The drive here was long and lonely. Just me, my old pickup truck, and miles of pine trees. When I finally arrived, the place looked forgotten. Cabins with peeling paint, tools rusted from years of rain and snow. Nature trying to take back what humans had built. Home sweet home, I muttered to myself as I carried my bags into the main cabin. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, dust covered everything like a thin blanket. I spent that first day cleaning and setting up. The company wanted the camp ready for workers in 2 weeks, plenty of time to get things in order. That night, I found an old leather journal stuffed in the desk drawer. It belonged to the previous foreman from 1947. At first, I thought it was just boring work notes. But then I saw entries about workers going missing. Not 1 or 2, but 7. Men disappeared without a trace. The last entry was scribbled in shaky handwriting. They're watching from the trees. God help us. I closed the journal and told myself it was nothing. Probably bears or wolves scared them off. Or maybe they just left because they weren't being paid enough. I'd seen plenty of weird things as a detective. This was just an old ghost story. The next morning, I started my routine. Up at dawn, walk around the camp to check buildings, test equipment, and make my radio call to the main office. The radio worked fine that first day. A scratchy voice confirmed they received my report and reminded me that supply trucks would arrive next week. During my inspection walk, I noticed something odd about the trees surrounding the camp. They had strange scars, perfect circles about the size of dinner plates, not like anything an animal would make. Too neat, too precise. I touched one of the circles, and the bark felt cold, much colder than the rest of the tree. 3 days after I arrived, an old Native American man showed up at the camp. He introduced himself as Joseph Crowfeather from the local Ojibwe tribe. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said, looking around nervously. "This place has bad spirits. The hungry ones live in the trees." I thanked him for his concern but told him I didn't believe in ghosts or spirits. He shook his head like I was. A stubborn child. "They don't care if you believe in them," he said before leaving. "They believe in you." That night, I double-checked all the locks on the cabin doors and windows. I told myself it was just a normal precaution, but deep down, I knew I was scared. Being alone in the woods makes your mind play tricks on you. As I tried to fall asleep, I heard a tapping sound coming from inside the walls. Tap, 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 rhythmic and steady. I convinced myself it was just the old wood settling, or maybe a woodpecker that somehow got confused in the dark. The next day, the radio started acting up. The signal kept breaking, filled with static. The person on the other end blamed it on solar flares. I nodded like I believed him, but a little voice in my head said something wasn't right. While looking for some old equipment manuals, I found blueprints of the original camp. They showed buildings I couldn't find anywhere on the property. A second bunkhouse, a small chapel, and something labeled observation post. I walked the entire camp twice, but found no trace of these structures. It was like they had been erased from existence. I didn't want to admit it then, but part of me came to this isolated place on purpose. After what happened with my partner back in Chicago, I needed to be alone. Every night, I still saw Mike's face as he bled out in that warehouse. The mob hit that went wrong. The bullet that should have hit me. "It should have been me," I whispered to the empty room as I poured myself another drink. Little did I know, in Cedar Ridge, I was far from alone, and something was already watching me, learning my habits, and waiting for the right moment to make itself known. I woke up on my 5th morning at Cedar Ridge feeling groggy and confused. The smell of fresh coffee filled the cabin, which made no sense at all. I always set up the coffee maker before bed, but I never turned it on. Yet there it was, hot coffee already made, steam rising from the pot. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaky. "Anybody here?" No answer came back. just the low hum of the coffee maker and the distant sound of birds outside. I poured myself a cup with trembling hands. Maybe I'd set the timer wrong. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. There had to be a normal explanation. After drinking my mysterious coffee, I headed out for my morning walk around the camp. The ground was damp from overnight rain, and that's when I saw them. Footprints in the mud that didn't match my boots. They were bare human feet, but something was wrong with them. I counted the toe marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I whispered, feeling sick to my stomach. 6 toes. I followed the footprints until they simply stopped in the middle of a clearing, like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. Later that day, I noticed something even stranger about the trees. A black liquid was seeping from the circular scars I'd seen earlier. But this liquid didn't drip down like sap should. Instead, it moved upward, crawling against gravity like it was alive. I reached out to touch it, then pulled my hand back. Some instinct told me not to make contact with that stuff. That night, I caught a glimpse of myself in the bathroom mirror, and froze. For just a second, so brief, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. I saw myself wearing a red flannel shirt, but I was wearing a blue t-shirt. I blinked, and my reflection matched reality again. The next morning, I decided to walk the perimeter of the camp, hoping some exercise would clear my head. That's when I found them human teeth embedded in the tree bark. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens, like they'd grown there naturally. Adult teeth, some with bits of silver fillings, still attached. I ran back to the cabin and tried the radio again. Nothing but static. I was truly alone. Or so, I thought, while chopping firewood that afternoon. I heard voices coming from deep in the forest. I stopped mid-swing and listened. 2 people were having a conversation, and one of them sounded exactly like me. "We should check the North Ridge tomorrow," my own voice said from somewhere among the trees. "The equipment is failing too quickly," another voice replied. I dropped the axe and ran toward the voices, shouting, "Who's there? Show yourselves." But when I reached the spot where the voices seemed to come from, nobody was there, just trees and silence. That night, I made sure to lock everything before going to bed. I even pushed a heavy dresser in front of the door. Despite my exhaustion, I fought to stay awake, afraid of what might happen if I closed my eyes. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the windows. When I went outside, all the chainsaws and axes had been removed from the tool shed and arranged in a circle in the clearing. Each tool pointed to the center, where someone had placed a small pile of teeth. My hands shook as I returned the tools to the shed. I tried using my compass to mark safe paths through the forest, but the needle spun wildly whenever I got within 100 yards of the main cabin. It was like the normal rules of nature didn't apply here anymore. That night, I had terrible dreams. I saw myself walking through the forest, digging in the dirt with my bare hands. When I woke up the next morning, my fingernails were caked with soil, and my pajamas were damp with morning dew. I had been sleepwalking. Panic set in as I tried to piece together what was happening. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't taking any medication. There was no reason for me to sleepwalk. I decided to search the forest where my nighttime self might have gone. After an hour of looking, I found a small clearing I'd never seen before. In the center was a tree with fresh carvings on it. As I got closer, my blood ran cold. The carving was a message in my own handwriting. "They're already inside." I backed away from the tree, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Something was very wrong at Cedar Ridge, and whatever it wasn't just watching me anymore. It was getting closer. I couldn't sleep that night. Every noise made me jump. The wind through the trees sounded like whispers. The creaking of the old cabin seemed like footsteps. I sat by the window with an axe in my hand, watching the dark forest. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, I saw them. Figures standing at the edge of the forest. At first I thought they were people, workers who had arrived early. Maybe. But as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I realized something was terribly wrong with them. They were shaped like humans, but they seemed ... empty. Like someone had drawn an outline of a person but forgot to color it in. I could see through them, like they were made of smoke or thin paper. I rubbed my eyes. Sure, I was just tired. But when I looked again, they were still there. 3 of them, watching the cabin, not moving, just watching. Then one of them spoke. Tom, you there, buddy?" My blood turned to ice. It was Mike's voice, my partner from Chicago, my dead partner. This isn't real, I whispered to myself. This can't be real. I closed my eyes tight and counted to 10. When I opened them, the figures were gone. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had heard. Later that morning, I found the courage to investigate the trees again. I picked one with a circular scar and, using an axe, carefully cut into it. The bark fell away easily, revealing something impossible. The tree was hollow. Not naturally hollow like some old trees get, but carved out with precision. The inside was smooth, like someone had sandpapered it, and there were small holes positioned at eye level, perfect for watching the camp without being seen. I checked another tree with a circular scar. It was the same, and another, all of them hollowed out like wooden lookout posts. As I was examining the third tree, I felt something cold pass through me, like walking through a freezer door. I spun around but saw nothing, yet I knew something had just moved through me, like a ghost. Over the next few days, things got worse. The hollow figures, I started calling them the hollow men in my head, appeared more often, always at the edge of my vision, always watching, and they could mimic voices perfectly. Sometimes they sounded like Mike, sometimes like my old boss, from Chicago. Once, they even used my mother's voice, calling me to dinner like when I was a kid. But the worst was when they used my own voice. "You let Mike die," my voice would say from the trees. "You hid while he took the bullet. Coward." I started to doubt my own memories. Had I really seen Mike die? Or had I hidden while he was shot? My mind felt foggy, like someone was erasing parts of it and writing in new memories. One night, I had a strange dream. I was floating above the camp, watching myself sleep. I could see through walls. I could move through solid objects. I was seeing the world as the hollow men saw it. When I woke up, I knew what they were. They fed on people, not their bodies, but their minds, their memories, their sense of self. They hollowed people out from the inside, starting with their guilt and their secrets. I had to know if I was right. I grabbed a shovel and headed to a spot in the forest where I'd seen the ground recently disturbed. I dug for what felt like hours. The shovel hit something solid, a boot, then a leg, then a whole body. It was a man in old-fashioned logging clothes. His body was perfectly preserved, like he'd died yesterday instead of years ago. But his eyes, his eyes were empty. Not just dead, but vacant, like windows with nothing behind them. I found 6 more bodies that day, all hidden in the forest, all loggers from the looks of their clothes, all with the same empty eyes. That night, I saw the hollow men splitting apart like cells dividing. One would become 2, then 4, each one an exact copy. They were multiplying, preparing for something. I barricaded myself in the cabin, but I knew doors and windows wouldn't stop them. They could move through solid matter like it wasn't there. I tried to stay awake, but exhaustion took over. In my dreams, I wasn't myself anymore. I was one of them. I could feel what they felt, a terrible hunger for memories, for identity, for the feeling of being alive. I saw through their eyes as they watched humans, learning their patterns, their habits, their weaknesses. I felt their joy when they found someone full of guilt or regret, the easiest emotions to feed on. When I woke up gasping for air, Joseph Crowfeather was sitting at my kitchen table. "How did you get in here?" I demanded. "The same way they do," he said calmly. "The real question is, how did you get here?" "What do you mean?" "I drove here last week." He shook his head sadly. "No, Tom, you've been here much longer than that." He told me the truth then. The hollow men weren't just mimicking humans. They had once been human. Loggers from the original camp who had awakened something ancient in the forest when they cut down a tree older than civilization itself. The forest entity had transformed them, hollowed them out, and now they served it, bringing it new consciousness to feed on, new memories to absorb. "But why me?" I asked. "Why did they bring me here?" Joseph looked at me with pity in his eyes. "They didn't bring you here, Tom," he said. "You never left." Joseph's words hit me like a truck. You never left. What did that mean? How could I have been here longer than a week? I remembered driving up. I remembered my apartment in Chicago. I remembered leaving the police force after Mike died, didn't I? I tried to recall specific details about my life in Chicago, but they seemed blurry, like an old photograph fading. With time, what was my apartment number? What color was my bedroom? Who was my neighbor? Simple questions that I suddenly couldn't answer. "This isn't possible," I said, my voice shaking. "I know who I am. I know where I came from. Joseph just watched me with sad eyes. Do you, or did they give you those memories? After he left, I sat alone in the cabin, trying to sort real memories from fake ones. But how could I tell the difference? Everything felt real to me. That night, they came to me again, the Hollow Men. They stood around my bed, watching. "We can take it away," one of them whispered. "The pain, the guilt. We can erase Mike's death from your mind." "Leave me alone," I shouted, covering my ears. "Join us, Tom. Give us your memories, and you'll never feel pain again." I threw a book at them, but it passed right through and hit the wall. They laughed with my voice. The next morning, I found a calendar in a drawer I hadn't opened before. It showed the date as November 1947, but that was impossible. It was 1962, wasn't it? Then I found a pile of my own daily logs, reports I'd written about the camp. They went back months, not days. My handwriting, my words, my signature on every page. Had I really been here for months? Had I somehow forgotten? As I tried to make sense of it all, I began seeing ... others, other versions of myself. A younger Tom in a police uniform, pacing in the corner, muttering about a case. An older Tom with grey hair, sitting in my chair, staring out the window, with empty eyes. Another Tom, covered in blood, screaming Mike's name over and over. They weren't solid like real people. They flickered like old movie projections, but they were all me. Different versions of me from different times. "What's happening to me?" I whispered, gripping my head. The walls of reality seemed to crack. Around me, I would be washing dishes one moment, then suddenly find myself in the forest at night. I'd blink and be back in the cabin. But hours had passed. Time wasn't working right anymore. It jumped forward, backward, sideways. I experienced moments from my past alongside my present. I saw glimpses of what might be my future. In one of these flashes, I saw the truth about Mike's death. We weren't ambushed by the mob like I remembered. We were following a lead on a missing persons case, the logging company. Men disappearing from remote camps. Mike had found a connection to Cedar Ridge. We came here together, and I ran. When the Hollow Men came for us, I ran and left Mike behind. I collapsed to the floor as the real memory broke through. The guilt I'd been carrying wasn't just about failing to save Mike. It was about abandoning him. The Hollow Men appeared again, surrounding me as I lay on the floor. "Now you remember," they said in unison. "Now you understand why you're here. We keep human souls," one of them said, its voice gentle like a parent comforting a child. "We preserve them. Together, no more loneliness, no more pain." I looked up at them, and for the first time, I could see inside their hollow forms. Faces, dozens of human faces swirling like smoke within each creature. Men who had come to Cedar Ridge and never left. "Am I already one of you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. They didn't answer. Instead, they parted to reveal something behind them, a mirror. I crawled toward it, afraid of what I might see. My reflection looked normal at first. Then my image flickered, and I saw the truth. My eyes were empty, hollow, just like the preserved bodies I'd found. "No," I whispered, "this isn't real. I'm still alive." I ran from the cabin, desperate to escape. I ran until my lungs burned, following a path I was sure led away from the camp. But after an hour of running, I found myself back at the main cabin. I tried another direction, same result. No matter which way I went, the forest led me back to Cedar Ridge. Exhausted and desperate, I collapsed near one of the hollow trees. As I caught my breath, I noticed something inside the tree that I'd missed before. A boot, a human leg. With trembling hands, I widened the opening in the tree. Inside was a body, my body, wearing the same clothes I had on when I first arrived at the camp, preserved perfectly, eyes empty and staring. I backed away, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. How could I be looking at my own dead body? How could I be both alive and dead, unless I wasn't alive at all? I sat on the forest floor for hours, staring at my own dead body inside the hollow tree. My mind couldn't make sense of it. How could I be here and also there? How could I be both alive and dead? As the sun began to set, Joseph Crowfeather appeared again, sitting quietly beside me. "Now you see," he said softly. "What am I?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You are Thomas Brennan," he said, "the original foreman of Cedar Ridge Logging Camp. The year was 1947 when you first came here." "That's not possible," I said, shaking my head. "It's 1962 now." That would make it ... 15 years, Joseph finished for me. 15 years trapped in a loop of your own making. He explained everything then. I wasn't a Chicago detective who came to be a foreman. I was always the foreman. The detective story was just that, a story, a false memory created to hide the truth. The journal you found was your own, Joseph said. You've been writing in it every time the loop resets, every time you try to escape and fail. I remembered finding the journal my first day at the camp. The handwriting that looked so familiar. But why, I asked. Why am I trapped here? Joseph pointed to the hollow tree containing my body. The forest entity feeds on guilt and regret, he explained. When you and your workers cut down the ancient tree, you awakened it. It consumed them quickly. But you, Tom, your guilt was so strong, so pure, that it couldn't consume you all at once. Instead, it keeps you in this cycle, feeding on your pain over and over again. What guilt? I asked. But even as the question left my lips, I remembered I was the one who ordered my men to cut down the sacred tree, despite warnings from the local tribe. I ignored the signs, the black sap, the strange sounds. I pushed them to keep working even when they wanted to leave. And when they started disappearing, one by one, I hid in my cabin. I let them die. The hollow men, I whispered. They're all my workers, the men I got killed. Joseph nodded. Each version of them is from a different loop. And each version of you, too. I looked around the forest with new eyes, suddenly understanding. The hollow men weren't monsters hunting me. They were reflections of my guilt, trapped in the same loop I was. How many times have I been through this? I asked. This is the 15th cycle, Joseph said. Each time, you try something different to escape. Each time, you fail because you refuse to face the truth. And what is the truth? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That you are responsible, he said simply, and that you must choose, become part of the collective consciousness of the hollow men and end your suffering, or break the cycle, once and for all. I stood up, a new determination filling me. How do I break it? You must destroy what the entity values most, the memories it feeds on, the guilt, the regret. You must accept what you did and forgive yourself. That night, I returned to the cabin and read my journal from cover to cover. 15 years of the same story playing out in different ways. 15 years of running from the truth. As dawn broke, the hollow men gathered round the camp. Dozens of them. All the versions of my workers. All the versions of myself. Watching. Waiting. I walked out to face them, carrying a can of kerosene. And matches. I know who you are. I called out. I know who I am. I was a coward. I got you all killed. And I've been paying for it ever since. I moved to the first hollow tree and poured kerosene over it. But no more, I continued. No more hiding, no more running. I lit a match and touched it to the tree. It caught fire immediately. Flames racing up the hollow trunk. From inside came a sound, not screaming, but sighing, like relief. The hollow men rushed toward me, but I was already moving to the next tree, and the next, setting each one ablaze. With each fire I felt memories breaking free. Workers' souls escaping the loop. I'm sorry, I shouted as I worked. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I accept my responsibility. I forgive myself. The hollow men began to dissolve as the trees burned, their forms becoming smoke that rose into the sky. I saved the tree with my own body for last. As I approached it, the forest floor began to shake. Roots burst from the ground, tangling around my legs. The ancient entity was revealing itself at last. It wasn't just a tree. It was the entire forest, a single organism that had grown for thousands of years before humans arrived. And at its center, towering above the canopy, was a massive tree unlike any I'd ever seen. Its bark was black as night. Its branches reached out like grasping hands, and carved into its trunk were faces, hundreds of faces frozen in expressions of terror. I see you now, I said, looking up at the monstrous tree, and I'm not afraid anymore. The battle that followed happened across multiple times at once. I fought in 1947 when I first arrived. I fought in 1962 where my loop had taken me. I fought in all the years between, against all versions of myself that had given in to fear. I poured the last of my kerosene over my own preserved body and the tree that held it. As I struck the match, I felt a moment of perfect clarity. I forgive myself, I whispered, and dropped the match. The explosion knocked me backward. The hollow tree erupted in flames that burned blue and green. The massive entity tree let out a sound like 1,000 voices screaming at once. Everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the forest floor. The hollow trees were gone. The hollow men were gone. Even the cabin and camp were gone, reclaimed by nature as if they'd never existed. Joseph Crowfeather helped me to my feet. "Is it over?" I asked. He nodded. "The cycle is broken. The entity is diminished, though not destroyed. It will sleep, now, for a long time, and the others, my workers, free," he said. "As are you." I looked down at my hands, expecting them to fade away, since my body had burned, but I remained solid. "Why am I still here?" I asked. Joseph smiled. "That is a mystery for another time, but I think you have been given a second chance." As we walked out of the forest together, I felt lighter than I had in years. The guilt was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I had faced it, accepted it, forgiven myself. Months later, I read in a newspaper that a logging company was planning to reopen Cedar Ridge. I wrote them an anonymous letter, warning them about what waited in those woods. I included my old journal as proof. I don't know if they'll believe it or dismiss it as the ravings of a madman, but I've done what I can. My part in this story is over, or at least I thought it was. Last night, I dreamed of Cedar Ridge again. In my dream, a new foreman arrived at the abandoned camp. He found a journal in the main cabin, my journal, and as he read it by lamplight, something watched him from the trees. Something hollow, something hungry. "My name is Rebecca Morrison, but everyone calls me Becca. I used to be a surgeon in a big city hospital until everything fell apart. Now, at 31, I find myself driving down a dusty road in the middle of nowhere, West Texas, with everything I own, packed in my old Jeep. 3 weeks ago, I got a letter saying I'd inherited a cattle ranch from my Uncle Joe, a man I barely knew. The timing couldn't have been better. After the accident at the hospital, after losing that little boy on my operating table when I shouldn't have been working, I needed to disappear. The malpractice case was settled, but my reputation was ruined. The whispers followed me everywhere. "That's her, the drunk doctor who killed that child." The ranch came as a surprise. I hadn't seen Uncle Joe since I was a kid. He was always the strange relative nobody talked about, the one who moved to Texas decades ago and became a recluse. Now his property was mine. As I pulled up to the main house, I was struck by how isolated it was. The nearest town was nearly 200 miles away, perfect for someone trying to escape their past. The house itself was old but solid, a large ranch-style building with a wide porch and weathered wooden siding. A few ranch hands were there to greet me. They seemed relieved to see me, which was odd. "Ms. Morrison," said an older man named Frank, who introduced himself as the foreman. "Good, you're here. Things haven't been right since your uncle passed." "What do you mean?" I asked, hauling my bags onto the porch. Frank exchanged looks with the other men. "Just strange happenings. You'll see. That first night, I found a letter from Uncle Joe in his desk drawer. The handwriting was shaky, like he'd written it just before he died. 'Becca,' it read, 'if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry to leave you with this burden, but you're the only one who might understand. You're a doctor. You know the body. Be careful of the caves in Devil's Canyon. The bone collectors are getting bolder. They're coming up more often now. I tried to keep them contained, but I'm too old, too tired. They need someone new. They'll find you. I'm sorry.' I dismissed it as the ramblings of an old man. People get confused near the end. But the next morning, Frank showed me around the property, and I noticed something strange. Bone fragments scattered across the ground in certain areas, too large to be from cattle. "What are these from?" I asked, picking up what looked like a piece of human femur. Frank just shook his head. "Your uncle never would say. Part of the strangeness around here." Later that week, I met Samuel Red Eagle, an elderly Comanche man who lived on the neighboring land. He'd come to introduce himself, but refused to step foot on the ranch property. "Your uncle was a good man who made bad deals," he told me, standing firmly on his side of the property line. "This land sits above what my people call Devil's Canyon. There are things in those caves that should be left alone." I laughed it off. "I'm a doctor, Mr. Red Eagle. I don't believe in superstitions." His face remained serious. "Being a doctor is exactly why they'll want you." I didn't understand what he meant then. I set up a small medical practice in one of the ranch house rooms. The nearest hospital was too far away, and the ranch hands needed someone to treat injuries. Word spread to the nearby Native American community, and soon I had patients coming from miles around. It felt good to be useful again, to help people, without the weight of my past mistakes hanging over me. But then the cattle started dying. Not from disease or predators, something was killing them with surgical precision. I found one cow with its ribcage opened as neatly as if it had been in an operating room. Specific bones had been removed, but the rest of the animal was intact. It's been happening for years, Frank told me when I showed him. Your uncle said to leave it be. I couldn't just ignore it. That night, I took a flashlight and went looking around the property. At the back of the ranch, hidden behind a stand of scrubby trees, I found something disturbing, a cave entrance that had been sealed with concrete. Recently, something had broken through from the inside. The concrete was shattered, with claw marks gouged into the remaining pieces. Whatever had come out was big, strong, and determined. Standing there in the darkness, I felt eyes on me from somewhere in the shadows. I ran back to the house, locked all the doors, and tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew Uncle Joe's letter wasn't just the ramblings of a dying man. Something was out there in the darkness. Something that collected bones with surgical precision, and somehow it knew I was here. I tried to forget about the broken cave entrance, but 2 nights later, I saw them for the first time. I was up late working on patient files when the dogs started barking like crazy. Then they suddenly went quiet. Too quiet. I grabbed a flashlight and my uncle's old shotgun and went to the window. What I saw made my blood freeze. 3 massive shapes moved across the ranch yard in the moonlight. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but they were huge, maybe 12 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in thick, matted fur that looked almost black in the darkness. I couldn't see their faces clearly, just glowing eyes that seemed to reflect the moonlight. I ducked down below the window, heart pounding. These weren't bears. They weren't any animal I'd ever seen. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the cattle pen. Against all common sense, I slipped outside to follow them. I needed to see what they were doing. I needed to know I wasn't going crazy. I crept to the cattle barn and peeked through a crack in the wooden wall. What I saw will haunt me forever. One of the creatures had a cow pinned down, but it wasn't attacking like a predator. It was ... operating. Its long fingers moved with incredible precision, making a perfect incision along the cow's side. The animal was alive, but strangely calm, as if in a trance. The creature reached inside and carefully removed a section of rib bone, then sealed the wound with some kind of sticky substance from a pouch at its waist. I must have made a noise, because suddenly all 3 creatures turned toward my hiding spot. I ran back to the house, locked myself in, and spent the night with the shotgun across my lap, shaking. The next morning, I found the cow alive and walking around, with only a thin scar showing where the creature had cut it open. Impossible. No animal could survive that kind of procedure without proper medical care. That's when I started to understand. These weren't just monsters, they had knowledge. Surgical knowledge. Over the next week, things got worse. 2 ranch hands disappeared. We found them 3 days later, wandering in the desert, confused but alive. Both were missing the same bone, the radius from their left arm, but the wounds were healed, as if they'd had surgery months ago, not days. I don't remember anything, one of them told me as I examined him. Just tall shadows and a clicking sound, like bones tapping together. The ranch hands started calling them the Beastmen and refused to go out after dark. I couldn't blame them. One morning, I found something on my porch, a gift. It was a human skeleton, perfectly arranged and articulated like a medical school specimen, but this wasn't normal. The bones had been modified, with strange carvings and extra growth in places no human should have. I heard the bone tapping at night, echoing from the caves. Tap dash tap dash tap. Pause, tap tap, like a code or a language. I knew I should leave, call the police, do something normal. But I was drawn to the mystery. The doctor in me needed to understand what these creatures were doing, and if I'm being honest, there was something else to a dark fascination with their surgical skills. One night, I found one of Uncle Joe's old journals hidden inside a wall safe. The combination was my birthday. He'd planned for me to find it. The journal documented 30 years of collaboration with what he called the Ancient Ones. According to his notes, the Beastmen had been there long before humans. They lived deep in the cave systems and had knowledge of anatomy that surpassed modern medicine. They could heal bones, modify them, even make them grow in new ways. Uncle Joe had worked with them, learning their methods and helping them with their experiments. In return, they gave him medical knowledge that made him seem like a miracle worker to the local communities. The journal entries got stranger toward the end. They're looking for a replacement. I'm too old now. They need someone younger, with formal training. I fear they'll want Becca when I'm gone. God forgive me for what I've done. I slammed the journal shut, feeling sick. My uncle had known they would come for me. He'd practically offered me to them. That night, I heard scratching at my bedroom window. When I looked out, one of the beastmen stood there, its massive form blocking the moonlight. It held up something in its hand, a bone tool shaped like a scalpel. It pointed at me, then at itself, then made a cutting motion. It wanted to show me something. I knew I should be terrified. I should run, but the doctor in me, the part that had always been curious about the human body and how to heal it, felt a strange pull. The beastman tapped on the glass. Tap dash tap dash tap, tapped up, like it was saying, join us, and God help me. I was tempted. The next morning, I woke up to find a wounded coyote on my porch. Its leg was broken badly, bones sticking through the skin, but it wasn't scared or in pain. It just lay there calmly, watching me. Next to it was one of those bone scalpels. They were testing me. I took the coyote inside and set up my medical equipment. As I worked to clean and set the broken leg, I felt eyes watching me from the windows. I knew they were out there, studying my technique, learning how I worked. When I finished bandaging the coyote, I looked up to see one of the beastmen standing in the doorway. In daylight, I could see it better. Its face was almost human-like, but stretched, with deep-set eyes that held an intelligence that scared me more than its size. It nodded at my work, then reached out one long-fingered hand and touched the coyote's leg. The animal shivered, and I watched in shock as the broken bone visibly straightened under the skin. The beastman looked at me and made a gesture like it was offering something. You can, ... heal bones, I whispered. It nodded slowly. That night, they brought me to the caves. I know I should have been terrified, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. Two of the beastmen led me through the broken concrete entrance and down into a network of limestone tunnels. The air got colder as we descended, and I could hear that bone-tapping sound echoing all around us. They brought me to a large chamber, deep underground. What I saw there changed everything I thought I knew about medicine. The cave was a laboratory. Stone tables were carved from the rock, arranged like operating stations. Bone tools hung on the walls, alongside diagrams of human and animal anatomy drawn with incredible detail. Some of the drawings showed things I'd never seen in medical school: extra bones, modified joints, enhanced structures. In the center of the chamber was a man, one of my patients from the Native American community, who had disappeared a week ago. He was awake but calm, lying on a stone table. His chest had been opened surgically, revealing his rib cage, but there was no blood. The edges of the wound were clean and preserved somehow. The lead beastman pointed to the man, then to me, then made a motion like it was returning something. You want me to ... help you put him back together? I asked. It shook its head and pointed to an empty space in the man's rib cage. Then it held up a modified rib bone, one that was longer and curved differently than a normal human rib. It wanted me to install this modified bone in the man. I can't do that, I said, backing away. That's not ethical. That's not medicine. The beastman made a sound like stones grinding together, a laugh. It pointed to the walls of the cave, where I now noticed ancient paintings. The images showed beastmen teaching early humans how to set bones, treat wounds, perform surgeries. One of them brought forward a leather-bound book. It was another of Uncle Joe's journals, older than the one I'd found. In it, he described how the beastmen had been the original teachers of medicine to humans, thousands of years ago. They had shown early healers how to mend bones and treat injuries. They aren't monsters, he'd written. They're the first doctors. But their understanding of healing is different from ours. They see the human body as something to perfect, not just repair. The beastman pointed to the patient again, then to me. I understood now. They weren't just asking for my help. They were offering to teach me, to show me things about the human body that no medical school could ever teach. I thought about my failure back in the city, the young boy who died because I made a mistake. What if I could learn to be better? What if I could gain knowledge that would let me save everyone who came to my table? If I help you, I said slowly, you'll help my patients, you'll teach me to heal like you do. The beast man nodded and held out its hand. The bone scalpel gleamed in the dim light of the cave. I took it. That night, I performed my first enhanced surgery under their guidance. The beastmen showed me how to place the modified rib in the man's chest. They demonstrated how their bone tools could seal tissue without stitches, how they could prevent pain and infection with methods I'd never seen before. When we finished, the patient woke up immediately. No recovery time, no pain. He looked at his chest in wonder as the beastman closed the incision, leaving only a faint line. "I feel stronger," he said, sitting up easily. Over the next few weeks, I learned more from the beastmen than I had in years of medical school. They brought me more patients, people who had agreed to their procedures in exchange for healing injuries that normal medicine couldn't fix. Each night, I'd descend into the caves and work alongside the creatures, learning their methods. Each morning, I'd return to my regular clinic, using subtle versions of their techniques to heal my regular patients. People started noticing. Patients who should have needed weeks to recover were walking out the same day. Injuries that should have left scars healed without a trace. "You're a miracle worker, Doc," they'd say. I just smiled and said nothing about my teachers. One night, the lead beastman took me deeper into the cave system than I'd ever gone before. We arrived at a chamber filled with stone pods, each containing what looked like a sleeping person, but they weren't exactly people. As I got closer, I could see that each one had been modified extra joints in their limbs, reinforced rib cages, elongated spines. They looked partially human, partially ... something else. The beastman pointed to them, then to me, then up toward the surface. "These are, what's your children?" I asked. It shook its massive head and made a gesture that encompassed the world above, and then I understood the truth. These weren't their children, these were their servants, the next generation. They were creating to walk among humans. My uncle hadn't just been their student, he'd been helping them build an army. I should have run. I should have called the authorities or burned the whole place down, but I didn't. Instead, I went back the next night, and the night after that. I told myself I was just learning from them, gathering knowledge to help people. But deep down, I knew I was crossing lines that should never be crossed. The beastmen began bringing me more challenging cases. People with injuries so severe they would have died in any hospital. A ranch hand crushed under a tractor. A child who fell down a well and broke her spine. A hunter mauled by a mountain lion. I worked on them all, using the beastmen's techniques. I placed modified bones in their bodies. I sealed wounds with the strange paste the creatures made. I watched as people who should have died walked away whole. "It's a miracle," they would say, looking at me with awe. "How did you do it?" "Just good medicine," I would answer, avoiding their eyes. But it wasn't just good medicine. It was something else entirely. One night, as I worked alongside the lead beastman, I noticed my hands moving differently. My fingers seemed to know what to do before my brain did. I could feel the patient's bones beneath their skin without touching them. I knew exactly where to cut, exactly how deep to go. The beastman noticed too. It made a satisfied sound and touched my forehead with one long finger. "What did you do to me?" I asked, suddenly afraid. It didn't answer, just continued working. But later that night, I found a new journal entry from Uncle Joe that explained it. The more you work with them, the more they change you. It's in there, touch, something that seeps into your skin and alters your brain. They're making me more like them, able to sense bone structure, to know the body in ways humans weren't meant to. It should terrify me, but the knowledge is too valuable to give up. I looked at my hands in the dim light. They didn't look different, but they didn't feel like my hands anymore either. The next day in my regular clinic, I treated a farmer with a broken arm without thinking. I reset the bone perfectly without even taking an X-ray. I just knew where the break was, how it should align. The farmer looked at me strangely when I finished in less than 5 minutes. "Ain't you gonna put a cast on it?" he asked. I blinked, coming back to myself. "Of course," I said, reaching for the casting materials, but I knew he didn't really need it. The bone was already knitting itself together, faster than should be possible. Something in my touch had changed it. Word spread about the miracle doctor at the old Morrison Ranch. People started coming from further away, seeking treatment for serious conditions. And I helped them all, using a bit more of the beastmen's techniques each time. Samuel Red Eagle came to see me, standing at the edge of my property as always, refusing to step foot on the land. "I've heard what you're doing," he said, his face grim. People are changing after you treat them. I'm healing them, I insisted. Are you? Look closer at your patients. Doctor, look at what's happening to them weeks after you heal them. I dismissed his warnings, but that night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my patient files and started reviewing cases from when I first arrived. The ranch hand with the crushed leg who now moved faster than any athlete. The woman with lung cancer whose chest had expanded to twice its normal size. The child with the broken spine who now could bend in ways that weren't humanly possible. I drove to the home of my first enhanced patient, the man who had received the modified rib. His wife answered the door, looking nervous. He's not here, she said quickly. He's been spending time in the caves. Says he feels drawn to them. What caves? I asked, my mouth dry. The ones on your property, Devil's Canyon. He goes there every night now. I drove back to the ranch in a daze. I'd been so focused on the immediate healing that I hadn't followed up properly. I hadn't seen what was happening to my patients after they left my care. That night, I confronted the lead beastman in the cave laboratory. What are you really doing to these people? I demanded. They're changing, aren't they? It nodded slowly, almost proudly, and led me to a deeper chamber I hadn't seen before. Inside were dozens of my former patients, all gathered together. They moved strangely, their joints bending at odd angles. Some had patches of coarse hair growing on their skin. Others had faces that were subtly elongated. They were becoming like the beast. This is what the modified bones do, I whispered, horrified. They're changing these people into ... into you. The lead beastman nodded again and placed a hand on my shoulder. It showed me a crude drawing, stick figures representing humans, then taller figures representing the beastmen, then figures in between. It pointed to the in-between figures, then to my patients, then made a spreading motion with its hands. They weren't just healing people, they were transforming them, creating a new race that could live both above and below ground, and I had been helping them do it. I stumbled backward, sick with the realization. No, I said, I won't help you anymore. This has to stop. The beastman's expression didn't change, but it reached out and touched my forehead again. Instantly, pain shot through my skull. I fell to my knees, gasping. It made the same gesture again, me helping them, or pain. I realized then that I wasn't their partner. I was their tool, just like my uncle had been, and they had no intention of letting me go. As I looked around at my former patients, I saw a terrible future unfolding, these half-human creatures spreading throughout the region, bringing more people to me for healing, creating more like themselves, until the beastmen could walk freely in the world above, and I had made it all possible. I'll fix this, I promised myself, even as I nodded to the beastman to make the pain stop. Somehow, I'll undo what I've done. But as I watched my hands move with inhuman precision that night, performing surgery I never learned in medical school, I wondered if it was already too late, not just for my patients, but for me. I spent the next 3 days planning. I knew I couldn't just run away. The beastmen would find me. And besides, I couldn't abandon the people I'd changed. I had to stop this at its source. The caves. That's where it all had to end. I gathered supplies from around the ranch, fuel cans, blasting caps from the tool shed, chemicals from my medical stores. Uncle Joe had been a military doctor before, moving here, and he'd kept some things that could be repurposed. I mixed chemicals to create explosive compounds, working with a precision that wasn't entirely human anymore. My plan was simple. I would destroy the main laboratory chambers and collapse the cave entrances. If I could cut off the beastmen from the surface, maybe the changes in my patients would stop progressing. But when I tried to prepare the explosives, something strange happened. My hands shook uncontrollably. My vision blurred. My body was fighting against me, refusing to complete the task. I tried a simple surgery instead, cutting into an orange like I would human tissue. Perfect control. No tremors. It hit me then. The beastmen had changed me more than I realized. They'd rewired my brain somehow. I could perform their enhanced surgeries with supernatural skill, but I physically couldn't do anything that might harm them. That night, I drove to see Samuel, Red Eagle. He was the only one who might understand, who might help. I made a terrible mistake, I told him, standing in his small living room. I helped them, and now I can't stop them. The old man nodded, as if he'd been expecting me. They've bound you to them. It's in your blood now. Your bones, is there any way to break it? He looked at me for a long time. There's only one way I know. You must cut it out of yourself. What do you mean? The first bone they changed in you. You must remove it and replace it with untainted bone. I thought back to those early days in the cave, the lead beastman touching my hand, a strange warmth spreading up my arm. My right radius, I whispered. That's where it started. Samuel nodded. If you can remove what they put in you, you might free yourself, but it will be dangerous. You'll be fighting against your own altered body. I drove back to the ranch, a desperate plan forming. I set up my operating room, laying out all the tools I would need. I prepared a local anesthetic, though I doubted it would work against whatever the beastmen had done to me. Just as I was about to begin, I heard them arriving outside. They knew what I was planning. The door burst open, and the lead beastman entered. Behind it were several of my former patients, now more beast than human. Their movements were jerky, unnatural. Their eyes held recognition but little humanity. The beastman pointed at my surgical tools, then shook its head slowly. I know what you did to me, I said, backing toward my medical cabinet. You changed me, made me like you. It nodded, then pointed to itself, to me, then made a gesture, encompassing the whole room. A family. It wanted me to see us as a family. You used me, I said. You made me help you change these people without their consent. The beastman made that grinding laugh sound again. It picked up a scalpel from my tray and held it out to me, not threatening, offering. Then it pointed down, to the caves below. I understood. It was offering me more knowledge, more power. If I went with them willingly, they would show me everything. For a moment, I was tempted. The doctor in me, the part that had always wanted to heal, to know more, felt the pull of that offer. Then I looked at my former patients, at their twisted forms, and knew I couldn't let this continue. No, I said. This ends now. The beastman's expression changed. For the first time, a flash of rage crossed its face. It gestured to my former patients, who started moving toward me. I backed up against the cabinet and felt for the hidden button Uncle Joe had installed. The old paranoid man had built escape routes throughout the house. As the former patients closed in, I hit the button. The floor beneath me opened, and I dropped into a narrow tunnel. I heard roars of rage above me as I slid down into darkness. The tunnel deposited me near one of the cave entrances. I had minutes at most before they would find me. I ran into the cave system, heading not away from the laboratory but toward it. Inside the main chamber, I found what I was looking for. The storage area for their bone tools and medical supplies. Among them was a container of the paste they used to seal wounds. It was the key to their healing ability. I was sure of it. I grabbed as much as I could and headed deeper into the caves, to a small chamber I'd discovered weeks earlier. It had natural gas seeping through the rock. Uncle Joe had marked it as dangerous in his journals. I set up quickly, my medical training fighting against the changes they'd made to me. My hands shook violently as I cut into my own arm, exposing the radius bone. The pain was blinding, but I kept going, fighting through it. I could hear them coming, the bone-tapping language echoing through the tunnels. They were getting closer. With a final, agonizing effort, I cracked my own radius bone and pulled out a small, glowing fragment that hadn't been there before my time with the beastmen. It pulsed with an unnatural light. As soon as it was out, my mind cleared. The fog I hadn't even realized was there lifted. I could think clearly again, see what I had been doing these past months, without the filter they had placed over my perception. I quickly splinted my arm and packed the wound with gauze. Then I set up the explosives around the natural gas vent, using a timer detonator. I had 10 minutes to get out. Just as I finished, the beastmen found me. The lead one entered the chamber first, followed by more of my transformed patients. It saw what I had done both to my arm and with the explosives, and made a sound, like mountains crumbling. It's over, I told it. I've set explosives throughout the cave system. This whole place will collapse in minutes. It looked at me with those ancient, intelligent eyes. For the first time it spoke, not in but in a deep, rumbling voice that seemed to come from the earth itself. We ... were ... here. First it said, I know, I answered, but what you're doing is wrong. You can't change people without their consent. You can't build your army through deception. Not ... army, it said. Evolution. Better ... humans. That's not your choice to make, I said. And it's not mine either, I'm sorry. I hit the detonator button, starting the countdown. The beastman roared and lunged for me. I ducked under its massive arm and ran for the tunnel that would lead. To the surface behind me, chaos erupted. The beast men and my transformed patients gave chase, but they were too big for some of the narrower passages. I squeezed through, my smaller human frame an advantage for once. I could see daylight ahead when a hand grabbed my ankle. I looked back to see one of my former patients, a woman I had treated for a crushed pelvis. Her face was barely recognizable, now elongated and covered in patchy fur. "Please," she said, her voice distorted but still human enough to break my heart. "Take me with you." I hesitated, but then the first explosion rocked the cave. Rocks began falling around us. "I'm sorry," I whispered, pulling free. "I'm so sorry." I ran the last few yards to the surface, emerging into the blinding Texas sunlight just as the main explosion hit. The ground shook beneath me, and a cloud of dust and debris shot out of the cave entrance. I kept running until I reached the ranch house, my lungs burning. Behind me, the ground was collapsing, creating a massive sinkhole where parts of the ranch had been. The cave system was caving in, burying everything and everyone inside. I grabbed my medical bag and Uncle Joe's journals, threw them in my Jeep, and drove away from Devil's Canyon as fast as I could. I didn't look back. My name is Margaret O'Brien. Everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 41 years old, and I used to be respected in my field. That was before the incident with David, before I crossed a line that should never be crossed, before I watched a patient I cared for too much take his own life because of my failures. But that's why I'm here at Whispering Pines. A second chance, a fresh start. At least that's what I tell myself as I drive up the winding road through towering redwoods that seem to swallow the sunlight. The building appears through the trees like something from another time. It's massive, all stone and dark wood, with wings stretching out into the forest, like arms trying to embrace the wilderness. No one has used this place in years. The sign at the entrance is faded, barely readable. Whispering Pines Retreat. Perfect for a disgraced psychiatrist, I muttered to myself as I unlocked the heavy front doors. The hinges creak like they're screaming. Inside, dust covers everything. Furniture sits draped in yellowed sheets like ghosts frozen in time. This place has a story, a dark one. The locals told me about it when I inquired about renting the facility. In 1967, 23 patients died here in a single night. Mass suicide, they said. No explanation, just 23 souls gone, their bodies arranged in a perfect circle in the main hall. I shake away the thought. I'm here to help people, not get spooked by old stories. The Vietnam veterans I plan to treat need someone who understands night, terrors and trauma. Men who came home but left their peace of mind in the jungle. Men who wake up screaming, fighting enemies who aren't there. Men who can't sleep because the past won't let them. I spend my first week cleaning out the East Wing. It's the smallest section of the building, but still large enough for my needs. 5 patient rooms, an office, a common area, and a kitchen. I work until my hands are raw, trying to scrub away both the dust and my own guilt. On my 8th day, I decide to explore the basement. The door is heavy steel, surprisingly new compared to the rest of the building. It takes 3 keys from the massive ring the property manager gave me before I find one that fits. The lights flicker on to reveal something I never expected. A laboratory. Not just any lab. A sleep study facility with equipment far more advanced than should have been here in the 1960s. 6 beds arranged in a circle, each surrounded by monitoring equipment. Helmets with wires hanging from metal arms. Screens. Recording devices. What were they doing down here? I whisper, my voice swallowed by the dead air. In a locked cabinet, I find files. Hundreds of them. Meticulously organized, patient records, sleep patterns, dream journals, and something else, research notes about oniric entities, dream beings. The writing becomes increasingly frantic, talking about contact with consciousness from the other side of sleep. As I'm reading, there's a knock upstairs that makes me jump. My first patient has arrived. Jimmy Clearwater stands at the door, tall but hunched, like he's carrying an invisible weight. His eyes dart around, never staying in one place. "You Dr. O'Brien?" he asks, voice rough from too many cigarettes. "Yes, please, call me Maggie. The guys at the VA said you might be able to help." He steps inside, flinching at the sound of the door closing behind him. I haven't slept more than 2 hours straight since Saigon. As I show him to his room, an old Native American man appears at the edge of the property. Jimmy notices him too. "That's my uncle," he explains. he insisted. Oncoming says, this place has dream stealers. I smiled politely. Well, we're here to steal away the bad dreams, right? Jimmy doesn't smile back. No, Doc, he means something else. Something that takes more than just dreams. That night, I set up the sleep monitoring equipment I found in the basement. Jimmy agrees to let me record his sleep patterns. As he drifts off, I watch the monitors from my makeshift office next door. 3 hours in, he begins to thrash. The monitors spike wildly. He's calling out names. Martinez, Cooper, get down. Fighting a war that ended years ago but still rages in his mind. But something strange happens on the monitor. For just a second, there's a shadow beside Jimmy's bed. A tall, thin shape that doesn't belong. I blink, and it's gone. Just as Jimmy bolts upright, screaming about the men in his unit who didn't make it home. They were all there, he gasps when I rush in. All the dead guys from my unit. But something else too. Something watching us. Something ... hungry, I tell myself. It's just his trauma manifesting. I tell myself the shadow was a glitch in the old equipment. But later that night, alone in my room, I can't shake the feeling that we're not alone in Whispering Pines. That something is waiting in the spaces between wakefulness and sleep. Something that knows I'm here. Something that knows my shame, my guilt, my secrets. And maybe, just maybe, it's been waiting for someone like me to open the door. 2 weeks later, I had 4 more patients besides Jimmy, all veterans, all with the same haunted look in their eyes, all unable to sleep through the night. What bothered me most wasn't their screams that echoed through the halls at night. It was what they said when they woke up. There was someone watching me sleep, said Rodriguez, a former Marine who jumped at every sound. I saw shadows moving around my bed, whispered Miller, who kept a knife under his pillow. Something was in my head, Doc. Not just memories. Something else, said Thompson, who hadn't slept more than 3 hours straight in 5 years. I tried to tell myself it was just shared trauma. These men had seen terrible things. Their minds were playing tricks on them. But then I saw the recordings. Every night, I monitored my patients' sleep patterns using the old equipment from the basement. At first, everything seemed normal, or as normal as it could be for men suffering from severe PTSD. Then I noticed something strange. At exactly 3:17 a.m., every single night, there would be a flicker on all the monitors, just for a second, like something passing in front of the cameras, something tall and thin that bent in ways a human body couldn't. I rewound the tapes, paused them. They're a shape, blurry but unmistakable, a creature like a shadow standing upright, with limbs too long and a head that tilted at an impossible angle. It's just equipment malfunction, I told myself, even as my heart raced. These machines are decades old. But then came the shared dreams. I was back in the jungle, Jimmy told me during our morning session. But this time, Martinez was there. You know, the guy from my unit who stepped on a mine. Only his face was wrong, like something else was wearing it. And he kept saying, "Let us in, Jimmy. Let us taste what you saw." That same day, Rodriguez described an identical dream. So did Miller. So did Thompson. Men who had never met before coming to Whispering Pines, who served in different units. Different years, all having the exact same nightmare. That night, I decided to do something I shouldn't. I set up monitoring equipment in my own bedroom and took a mild sedative. If something was happening to my patients in their sleep, he needed to experience it firsthand. I woke up screaming at 3:20 a.m., my sheets soaked with sweat. In my dream, I'd been back at my old practice. David, my patient who killed himself because of my failure, sat across from me, but his eyes were empty black holes, and when he opened his mouth, a voice that wasn't his said, "We've been waiting for someone like you, Maggie, someone who understands the mind, someone with guilt like yours." My hands shook as I rewound the recording from my room. There, at 3:17 a.m., a shadow entered my room. It stood over my bed for exactly 3 minutes. I couldn't see its face, but I felt certain it was smiling. The next morning, Jimmy came to my office looking worse than ever. "I don't remember Vietnam anymore, Doc," he said, his voice flat. "What do you mean? The jungle, the ambush where half my unit died. I know it happened, but I can't remember it. It's like someone took it." One by one, my other patients reported the same thing. Specific traumatic memories, gone, not healed, not processed, just ... missing, leaving an empty space behind. I went back to the files I'd found in the basement, reading more carefully now. The research notes talked about entities that fed on human dreams, not just any dreams, traumatic ones, painful ones, the kind filled with guilt and fear and shame. The oneric entities require psychic sustenance. One researcher had written, they consume the emotional energy generated by nightmares. In exchange, they offer relief, the removal of the traumatic memory, but the cost is far greater than our subjects realize. The last page of the file was a warning, the handwriting frantic. They're using us as a doorway. Every memory they take creates a connection, a bridge between their world and ours. If we don't stop them, the page was torn there. Whatever warning the researcher had tried to leave was lost. That afternoon, I set up cameras in every room of the facility. If these things were real, if they were somehow feeding on my patients' trauma, I needed proof. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the monitor's coffee cup in my shaking hand. As the clock ticked toward 3:17 a.m., right on time, the shadows came. Not just one, 5 of them, one for each patient. They slipped into the rooms like smoke, gathering round the beds. I watched in horror as they bent over my sleeping patients, their long fingers touching foreheads, their faceless heads tilting as if listening to something I couldn't hear. On the sleep monitors, all 5 patients entered REM sleep simultaneously. Their brain patterns synchronized perfectly, like they were all having the exact same dream. But most terrifying of all, on Jimmy's monitor, I could see 2 brainwave patterns, his ... and something else's, something that wasn't human. They were in his head, they were in all their heads, and now they knew I was watching. As if hearing my thought, one of the shadow creatures turned slowly toward the camera in Jimmy's room. It had no eyes that I could see, but I felt it looking at me through the screen. It raised one impossibly long finger to where its mouth should be. Then it pointed at me, not at the camera, at me, sitting in my monitoring room. "We see you too, Maggie." I didn't hear the words. I felt them, crawling inside my mind, like spiders, and I knew then that it wasn't just my patients they wanted. They wanted me too. I didn't tell my patients what I saw. What would I say? "By the way, shadow monsters are eating your nightmares while you sleep." They'd think I was the one who needed help, not them. But the creatures knew I'd seen them, and they started coming for me. Every night when I closed my eyes, I'd see David, my patient who died because of me. He'd sit at the foot of my bed, looking just like he did the last time I saw him alive. But his eyes were wrong, empty, like someone else was looking through them. "We can take it away, Maggie," he'd say, his voice mixed with something older and colder. The guilt, the shame, the memory of finding me with my wrists cut open. "We can make it all go away." I'd wake up gasping, tears on my face. Part of me wanted to say yes, to let them take those memories from me, just like they'd taken the war memories from my patients. But I knew there would be a price. One morning, I found Jimmy sitting in the common room, staring at nothing. When I spoke to him, he smiled, a peaceful, empty smile I'd never seen on his face before. "I don't remember why I came here," he said calmly, "but I feel better now." His eyes were different, flat, like someone had taken an eraser to parts of his mind, leaving blank spaces behind. That same day, Miller came to my office complaining about a cut on his arm that wouldn't stop bleeding. A deep, jagged gash. "I must have done it in my sleep," he said, confused, "but I don't remember how." I cleaned and bandaged the wound, but something about it bothered me. That night, I reviewed his sleep tape. At 3:17 a.m., the shadow came as usual. Miller thrashed in his bed, fighting something in his dreams, and then I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A cut appeared on his arm in the exact spot he'd shown me, like something in his nightmare had hurt him, and the injury had followed him into the waking world. The next day, I found an old journal hidden behind a loose brick in the basement wall. The handwriting matched the warning note I'd found earlier. It was from Dr. Thomas Reed, the head psychiatrist at Whispering Pines in 1967. "The entities have revealed something incredible," he wrote. "The suicides in 1967 weren't deaths at all. The 23 patients who supposedly died that night are still here, their bodies gone, but their minds trapped in a collective dreamscape created by the entities. They're being kept in a kind of mental zoo, their consciousness preserved but imprisoned. The entities feed on their continuous terror and confusion." I felt sick as I read this. If this was true, Somewhere in this building, 23 minds were still suffering, trapped in an endless nightmare for almost 2 decades. That night, the David thing in my dreams made me an offer. "Let us work with your patients, Maggie," it said. "You're a skilled psychiatrist. You understand the mind better than most. Help us access more dreamers, and we'll help you understand our world." "What are you?" I asked, knowing somehow that this was more than just a dream. The thing wearing David's face smiled. "We exist in the space between thoughts. We've always been here, watching from the other side of consciousness. Human minds are ... delicious to us, especially broken ones, and the patients from 1967, the ones who supposedly killed themselves." David's face twitched, like something else was trying to peek through. "They're still here, still dreaming. Would you like to meet them?" Suddenly, I was standing in the main hall of Whispering Pines, but it looked new, clean. 23 patients, sat in a circle, their eyes open but unseeing. They rocked back and forth, mumbling to themselves. "They think they're still alive," the David thing whispered in my ear. "They think it's still 1967. We've kept them in a loop, reliving the same day over and over. Their fear never gets old. Their confusion never ends. An endless buffet." I woke up shaking, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just about nightmares anymore. These things were trapping human minds, feeding off them like parasites. The next day, strange things started happening. Thompson came to breakfast with knowledge he couldn't possibly have. "I dreamed I was in Rodriguez's village in Vietnam," he said. "I could see everything that happened to him. The children burning, the women screaming. Rodriguez dropped his coffee cup." "How do you know about that?" "I never told anyone about that day." "I saw it," Thompson said simply. "We all did. We're starting to share everything now." My patients were experiencing bleed-through, sharing each other's memories and traumas in their dreams. The barriers between their minds were breaking down. That night, I found all 5 of my patients sleepwalking. They moved in perfect unison, like puppets controlled by the same hand. They were arranging furniture in the main hall into a circle, just like the one I'd seen in my dream. Just like the one where the 1967 suicides had been found. When I tried to wake them, they all turned to look at me with the same empty eyes. "They're coming through," they said in perfect unison. "You opened the door, Maggie. You brought us here. You're the perfect conduit." "Who am I talking to?" I asked, my voice shaking. 5 identical smiles spread across my patients' faces. "We are the eaters of dreams, and soon we'll be the eaters of reality." I ran to my office and locked the door, my heart pounding. I pulled out Dr. Reed's journal again, flipping frantically to the last pages. "The entities need a psychologically trained mind to fully cross over," Reed had written. "They've been preparing Whispering Pines for decades, turning it into a weak point between our world and theirs. God help us if they ever find the right person to complete the connection." With a sinking heart, I realized why the creatures had seemed so pleased when I arrived. A psychiatrist with a guilty conscience and a desperate need for redemption. The perfect conduit. That night, as I tried to stay awake, I saw David sitting in the chair across from my bed. But this time, he wasn't. A dream, I could see him with my open eyes. "The veil is thinning, Maggie," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "Soon, the dream will be reality, and reality will be our feast." I blinked, and instead of David, there was a tall, thin shadow with too many joints and a head that tilted at an impossible angle. It reached for me with fingers like black smoke. "Time to sleep, Doctor," it whispered. "Time to dream with us forever." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I drank coffee until my hands shook and paced the halls of Whispering Pines, trying to understand what was happening. My patients were getting worse. During the day, they walked around like sleepwalkers with their eyes open. They would start sentences that others would finish. They moved together, ate together, like parts of one mind spread across 5 bodies. "We're dreaming right now, aren't we, Doc?" Jimmy asked me at breakfast, his voice flat. "This isn't really happening." "You're awake, Jimmy," I said firmly. "This is real." All 5 of them laughed at exactly the same time. "Are you sure?" Thompson asked, but his lips kept moving after he stopped talking, like he was saying something I couldn't hear. I checked the sleep lab recordings and found something impossible. According to the brainwave monitors, my patients were in REM sleep all the time now, even when they were walking around, talking, eating. Their bodies were awake, but their minds were dreaming. The line between sleeping and waking was disappearing. That afternoon, I found Rodriguez in the common room, holding something that made my blood run cold. A small wooden toy soldier, exactly like the ones I'd had as a child. The ones I'd only ever seen in my own dreams. "Where did you get that?" I asked, my voice shaking. He smiled vaguely. "You gave it to me, Dr. O'Brien, in the dream. Last night, don't you remember?" But I did remember. I'd dreamed I was a little girl again, playing with my toy soldiers, and a tall shadow had been watching me, reaching into my memories, taking things. The entities weren't just entering dreams anymore. They were bringing pieces of dreams back into the waking world. That night, I made a decision I knew was dangerous. I took a sleeping pill and left a note on my desk explaining everything I'd learned in case I didn't wake up. Then I deliberately tried to dream, to find the creatures on their own ground. I found myself standing in the main hall of Whispering Pines, but it was different, larger, with hallways that stretched into darkness and doors that led to impossible places. My patients were there, sitting in a circle, just like the victims, from 1967, and around them stood the shadow creatures, tall, thin shapes that bent in ways that hurt to look at. "You came willingly," said one, its voice like static in my mind. "How interesting. What do you want?" I asked. "Why are you doing this?" "We want what all living things want," it replied. "To grow, to expand. Your world is so ... solid, so limited. In our realm, thought becomes reality instantly. Imagine what we could do in your world." Another shadow stepped forward, and with a shock, I recognized it, not by sight, but by feeling. It was David, or what was left of him. "They found me after I died. Maggie," he said, his voice echoing. "They offered me peace if I helped them reach you. They've been looking for someone like you for a long time, like me." "Why?" "A psychiatrist," the first shadow explained. "Someone who understands the mind, who can bridge the gap between thought and reality. We've been preparing for decades, but we needed the right conduit." With horror, I realized what they were saying. They needed me to complete whatever they had started in 1967, to open a permanent doorway between their dream dimension and our physical world. I tried to wake myself up, but I couldn't. The dream held me tight. "Let me show you what we can offer," the shadow said, and suddenly I could see into the minds of my patients. All their pain, all their trauma, the things they'd seen in Vietnam, the guilt they carried, the nightmares that haunted them, and I could see how easily I could take it all away. Not just hide it or help them process it, but remove it completely. "That's what you want, isn't it, Doctor?" the shadow whispered. "To heal them completely, to make up for what happened with David." I felt tears on my face, in the dream and in reality. "Yes," I admitted, "but not like this. There is no other way." It said, "Humans can't truly heal each other, but we can." I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. Something felt wrong, different. When I looked at my hands, they seemed slightly transparent, like I wasn't fully in my body anymore. Over the next 3 days, reality at Whispering Pines fell apart completely. Objects from dreams appeared in hallways, toys from childhood, weapons from war, people who couldn't possibly be there. My patients began showing abilities that should have been impossible. Thompson could tell what I was thinking before I spoke. Miller could move objects without touching them. Rodriguez could disappear from one room and appear in another. And I found I could do something even stranger. If I concentrated, I could step into my patients' dreams while they were having them, not just watch on monitors, but actually be there with them. The first time it happened, I found myself back in Vietnam with Jimmy. The jungle thick around us. The air smelled of rain and gunpowder. Jimmy was younger, terrified, clutching his rifle as he hid in a foxhole. "Jimmy," I said, touching his shoulder, "this isn't real. You're dreaming." He looked at me, confused. "Doc, how are you here?" Before I could answer, I felt something cold behind me. One of the shadow creatures stood there, watching us. "You shouldn't interfere, Doctor," it said. "These memories belong to us now." When I woke up, Jimmy was standing in my doorway, watching me sleep. "You were in my head," he said flatly. They didn't like that. That night, I found all 5 patients in the main hall again. They were building something, a circle of chairs with strange symbols drawn on the floor in what looked horribly like blood. They worked in perfect unison, like parts of a machine. "What are you doing?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. They all turned to look at me with the same empty eyes. Preparing, they said together. The doorway opens tonight. I ran back to my office and locked the door, frantically searching through Dr. Reed's journal for anything that might help. Near the end, I found a passage that made my heart stop. The entities exist in a dimension where thought becomes reality. Instantly, Reed had written, if they fully cross into our world, they'll bring that property with them. The barrier between imagination and reality will collapse. Every fear, every nightmare, every dark thought humans have will become real. It will be the end of everything. We know. I looked out my window and saw something impossible. The forest around Whispering Pines was changing. Trees bent in ways they shouldn't. The sky had a strange purplish tint. Reality itself was starting to warp. A knock at my door made me jump. When I opened it, David stood there, not a dream or hallucination, but solid and real, or as real as anything was anymore. It's happening, Maggie, he said, his eyes sad. They're coming through, and they're using your guilt, our connection, as the final bridge. How do I stop it? I whispered. You can't, he said simply. Not completely, but you might be able to contain it. If someone stays behind, someone who understands both worlds. I knew then what I had to do. The entities had chosen me, because I understood the human mind. That understanding was their strength, but it could also be their weakness. As the walls of Whispering Pines began to warp and shift around me, I made my choice. I would enter the dream world one last time, not to escape, but to fight, because some nightmares need to be faced head-on. I found my patients in the main hall, sitting in a perfect circle, just like the victims from 1967. Their eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing. Around them, the air seemed to ripple and bend like heat waves over hot pavement. In the center of their circle stood the tallest shadow creature I'd seen yet. Unlike the others, this one seemed more solid, more real. It had a face, or something like a face, with countless shifting features that never stayed still. I realized with horror that I recognized some of them faces of my patients, of David, of the 1967 victims. This wasn't just one entity, it was all of them combined. Every consciousness they had ever consumed, merged into one massive being. You're too late, Doctor, it said in a voice made of many voices speaking together. The door is already opening. Around us, the walls of Whispering Pines groaned and shifted. Windows showed impossible landscapes, purple skies, twisted trees, mountains that moved like breathing. Things reality was coming apart at the seams. I knew what I had to do. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the circle and sat down. What are you doing? The entity asked, sounding almost confused. If you want to use my mind as a conduit, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, then I'm giving it to you. But I'm coming along for the ride. The shadow creature laughed, a horrible sound like breaking glass. You think you can fight us in our own realm? We've existed since the first human had the first nightmare. We are fear itself. Maybe, I said, but I understand the mind better than you do, and I'm not afraid anymore. I closed my eyes and let go of my grip on reality. I felt myself falling into the deepest sleep I'd ever known. When I opened my eyes, I stood in a vast, empty space. The ground beneath me shifted like black sand. The sky above swirled with colors that shouldn't exist. And all around me were people, my patients, David, and others I didn't recognize. The victims from 1967. They stood frozen like statues, their faces locked in expressions of terror. This was the collective nightmare, the mental zoo where the entities kept their prey. In the distance rose a massive structure like a twisted version of Whispering Pines, its walls breathing, its windows looking out into different times and places. Welcome to our home, Doctor, said a voice behind me. I turned to find the shadow, leader, now even larger, towering over me like a skyscraper made of darkness. You've made a terrible mistake, it said. Now you'll join our collection forever. No, I said firmly. You made the mistake. You brought a psychiatrist into a world made of thought. I concentrated, remembering everything I knew about dreams, about the mind, about how thoughts shape reality. In this place, imagination was power, and I had spent my entire career understanding how the mind works. The ground beneath my feet solidified. The air around me cleared. I was creating a bubble of stability in their chaos. Impossible, the entity hissed. No human can control this realm. I'm not controlling it, I said. I'm understanding it. There's a difference. I turned to the frozen people around me. They're not yours to keep. I said. These mines belong to themselves. I reached out and touched Jimmy first. Jimmy Clearwater, Vietnam, 1968. Ambush in the jungle. You survived. This isn't real. Jimmy's eyes blinked. Awareness returned to them. Doc, he whispered. What's happening? You're dreaming, I told him. We all are, but we can wake up. One by one, I moved through the frozen victims, calling their names, reminding them who they were. My patients responded quickly. The 1967 victims were harder. They'd been trapped here so long they'd almost forgotten they were dreaming. The shadow entity screamed in rage, the sound shaking the dreamscape around us. Stop. They are ours. No, I said. They never were. I turned to face the creature directly. I understand what you are now. You're not demons or monsters. You're parasites. You feed on fear and trauma because you can't create anything yourselves. You need us more than we need you. The entity lunged at me, but I stood my ground. In this world of thought, courage was a shield. You can't defeat us. It roared. We are eternal. I don't need to defeat you, I said calmly. I just need to contain you. I turned to the others, now awake and aware. Go, I told them. Follow the path I made. It will lead you back. What about you, Doc? Jimmy asked. I smiled sadly. Someone has to close the door from this side. David stepped forward. I'll stay with you. I shook my head. No, you've been here too long already. It's time for you to find peace. As they left, following the stable path I'd created through the nightmare landscape, I turned back to the shadow entity. Now, I said, let me show you how a psychiatrist fights. I concentrated all my knowledge, all my training, all my understanding of the human mind. In this realm, I could create paradoxes, thoughts that contradicted themselves, mental loops. That had no end. I built a labyrinth around us, a prison made of impossible thoughts. What are you doing? The entity shrieked as the labyrinth closed around us, creating a paradox, I said. A dream that can't wake up, but can't continue. A thought that thinks about itself, thinking about itself. An endless loop. The dreamscape shuddered and warped. The entity tried to escape, but the paradox pulled it back, trapping it in circles of logic that had no end. If you trap us here, you'll be trapped too. It howled. I know, I said quietly. That's the price. Back in the real world, my patients woke up gasping in the circle. The victims from 1967 appeared too confused and disoriented after decades in the dream world. The walls of Whispering Pines stopped shifting. The impossible landscapes outside the windows faded back to normal forest. But in the center of the circle, my body remained, eyes open but unseeing, breathing but not awake, present but not there. My name is Daniel Restrepo, but everyone calls me Danny. I've been staring at the same cracked ceiling for 3 hours now, listening to the desert wind whistle through the broken windows of what used to be the Adobe Wells Sheriff's Office. This ghost town is my new home, more prison, depending on how you look at it. 48 hours ago, I was sitting in a courtroom in El Paso, pointing my finger at Emilio Varga, the man who's been running drugs across this border for the past decade. I spent 3 years undercover in his organization as a DEA agent. Now, I'm here, hiding in this forgotten speck on the map where Arizona kisses Mexico, because there's a price on my head that would make most lottery winners jealous. Danny, check in. Over the radio on my makeshift desk crackles to life. I'm here. Nothing to report except sand and more sand. Over. I respond to Martinez, my handler back in Phoenix. Keep your head down. We're still working on a more permanent solution. Remember, no contact with anyone. As far as the world knows, you disappeared after the trial. Over. Hard to make contact when there's nobody within 20 miles. Over and out. I click off the radio and sigh. Adobe Wells has been a ghost town since the late 1960s, when the Border Patrol station was suddenly abandoned. Nobody talks about why. The official story is budget cuts, but the cobwebs in this place hold secrets. My first day here, I explored the building's an old general store, a saloon, a few houses, and this sheriff's office where I've set up camp. There's something not right about this place. The buildings look like everyone just got up and left. In the middle of lunch, coffee cups still on desks, papers still in typewriters. By my second day, I found the tunnels. They run beneath the entire town, connecting buildings and stretching toward the border. Perfect for smuggling. I spent hours mapping them, finding exits in abandoned wells, store basements, even inside what used to be the town's small church. As night falls on my third day here, I'm finishing a can of beans when I hear the soft strumming of a guitar. Mexican folk music drifting through the empty streets. I grab my gun and move to the window. The music is coming from the old saloon across the dirt road, but the building is dark, empty. "Hello," I call out, against my better judgment. "Anyone there?" The music stops instantly. The next morning I drive my Jeep 20 miles to the nearest trading post to get supplies. An old Tohono O'odham man watches me load up bottled water and canned food, who's staying in Adobe Wells. He asks, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Just passing through," I lie. "Nobody passes through there anymore. Not since the skin thieves came." He turns away, refusing to look at me. "Skin thieves? What are you talking about?" "The ones who wear others like clothes. They dance in stolen skin under the moon." He walks away, muttering something in his native language. I brush it off as superstition, but on the drive back, his words stick with me like burrs. That night, I set up surveillance cameras at the main entrances to town. If anyone's coming for me, cartel, hitmen or otherwise, see them first. I radio Martinez to check on my family. They've been moved to a safe house after Vargas. People threatened them. The guilt of putting them in danger gnaws at me worse than hunger. They're safe. Danny, your testimony put Varga away for life. It was worth it. I'm not so sure anymore. On my 5th day, I find the first body. It's in the back room of the general store, a man in a border patrol uniform, sitting upright in a chair. His skin is leathery, preserved somehow, but there's no smell of decay. His eyes are open, staring at nothing. No signs of violence, no bullet wounds, no blood. Just a man who sat down one day and never got up again. I find 6 small bodies over the next 2 days, all preserved the same way, all with the same vacant expression. In the border patrol station, I discover logbooks dating back to the evacuation. The final entries are disturbing. Officer Miller, acting strange today, says he keeps seeing himself around town. Chief Rodriguez claims someone's been in his house, says things are moved, says he feels like he's being watched by himself. Something wrong with Carson. He's talking about people who aren't there, says we're not who we think we are. The final entry simply reads, "They're wearing us now." I close the logbook, my hands shaking, as I walk back to my makeshift headquarters. I swear I catch a glimpse of someone in my peripheral visions, someone with my face ducking into an alley. That night, the music starts again, and this time, I hear voices too, laughing, talking, like a town full of people having a good time. But Adobe Wells has been empty for more than 50 years. At least, that's what I thought. I haven't slept properly in days. The music from empty buildings keeps playing at night. Sometimes it sounds like a party, sometimes like a funeral. I'm starting to see things that can't be real. Yesterday, I saw myself, not in a mirror, not a reflection. I saw myself walking across the street, heading into the old post office. I followed, gun drawn, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Federal agent," I shouted, kicking in the door. The room was empty. Dust swirled in the sunlight coming through dirty windows. No footprints except mine. But then I heard my own voice coming from the back room. "We need to move faster. The others will be here soon." I crept closer, pressed against the wall, and peeked around the corner. There I was, someone who looked exactly like me talking to an empty chair, like someone was sitting in it. I must have gasped because the other me turned and stared right at me. My face stretched into a smile that was too wide. Too wrong I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran back to the sheriff's office and locked every door and window. This morning, I checked the surveillance cameras. They showed me entering the post office. They showed me running out. But they never showed the other me. Martinez called on the radio today. "Danny, we've got a problem. Someone claiming to be you called headquarters yesterday." My stomach dropped. What did they want? They asked for extraction. Said the cartel found your location. "That wasn't me," I whispered. "I know. We traced the call to Adobe Wells, but not from your radio frequency. Be careful. Danny, we think Vargas people might have found you, but it's not Vargas people. It's something worse. I've started finding things in town that don't make sense. Like the grocery store with fresh food. The houses with lights on at night, but empty when I check them during the day. And the people glimpses of townsfolk going about their business who vanish when I try to approach them. Today, I followed a woman in a blue dress, walking down Main Street. She turned a corner, and when I rounded it seconds later, she was gone. In her place was a puddle of something clear and sticky, like melted plastic. I've started documenting everything in a journal. I need to keep track of what's real and what's not. The Border Patrol logs mentioned officers acting strange before the town was abandoned. Now I understand what they meant. Last night, I watched from my window as 3 versions of the same man walked down the street together, talking and laughing, like old friends. They all had the same face, same clothes, same voice. Then they split up, each one entering a different building. I think I know what's happening now. The old man at the trading post called them skin thieves. The things in this town, they can look like anyone. They can look like me, and they're learning. This morning, I heard my radio crackling. I thought it was Martinez, but it was my own voice coming through. Extraction team, en route to your location. Stand by for coordinates. I didn't respond. Instead, I smashed the radio. But an hour later, my cell phone rang, the one I keep for emergencies only. It was Martinez. Danny, what the hell? You just radioed us with new coordinates, then went silent. That wasn't me, I said, my voice shaking. Whatever you do, don't send anyone here. Danny, you're not making sense. The extraction team is already on the way. I hung up and threw the phone against the wall. They are coming, people I care about, people who trust me, and they're walking into a trap. I needed to know more, so I went back to the Border Patrol station. In a locked cabinet, I found personal journals from the officers. One wrote about seeing multiple versions of his partner in different parts of town at the same time. Another described watching his own skin slip when he looked in the mirror. The last entry in the chief's journal chilled me to the bone. They don't just take your appearance. They take your memories, your thoughts. Wilson thinks there's some kind of desert spirit from Tohono O'odham. Legends, things that lived here before people, things that want to be people. They're wearing us like suits, but we're still alive inside, watching. On my way back to the sheriff's office, I saw one of them change. A man standing in the middle of the street suddenly went rigid. His skin rippled like water, then seemed to split at the seams. For just a second, I saw something underneath, something pale and shapeless before the skin sealed back up. But now he had a different face. A face I recognized from the Border Patrol photos. They know I'm watching them. Now they're watching me back. Tonight, I caught a glimpse of myself standing in my own room, looking at me through the window from inside. When I rushed in, gun drawn, the room was empty. But the journal I'd been keeping was open on the desk, and new words were written there. In my handwriting, "We like your skin, Danny. It fits us well. I don't know how much longer I can stay here, but I don't know where else to go. If I leave, they might follow me. If I stay, they might become me. And the worst part, I'm starting to wonder if they already have." I woke up this morning with dirt under my fingernails and no memory of going outside. My boots were muddy. My gun had been fired, 3 bullets missing. I found myself checking my skin for seams, running my fingers along my arms and face, making sure I'm still me. Am I still me? I keep having memories that don't make sense. I remember growing up in El Paso, but also in Phoenix. I remember my mother dying when I was 12, but I also remember visiting her last Christmas. Both feel real. Both can't be true. Yesterday, I found photos in my wallet I don't remember putting there, me standing with people I've never met, smiling like we're old friends. One shows me at what looks like a cartel party, arm around Varga himself. But that never happened. I was undercover, but I never got that close to him. I never took photos. It would have blown my cover. Unless, that's not how it happened. Unless my memories are wrong, I've started testing myself. Writing down basic facts about my life each morning, then checking them at night to see if my memories have shifted. My name is Daniel Restrepo. I am 35 years old. Asterisk, I was born in Tucson, Arizona. I joined the D8 years ago. I testified against Emilio Varga last week. Asterisk, simple facts. Things I know for sure. But even these are starting to feel shaky. This afternoon, I was going through the tunnels beneath the town when I heard voices, cartel members I recognized. Javier Mendez and Carlos Ruiz. Vargas, top lieutenants. I'd seen both die in a shootout 6 months ago. I watched Mendez bleed out. I closed his eyes myself. But there they were, alive, talking in Spanish about shipment routes. I hid in the shadows, listening. They weren't just talking about drugs. They were talking about me. The real Danny is still in El Paso, Mendez said. This one is just another copy. Does he know? Ruiz asked. They never know at first. They think that the original. I must have made a noise, because they both turned toward my hiding spot. Their faces ... rippled, like something was moving underneath. Come out, Danny, Mendez called. We know you're there. We've been watching you for days. I ran, back through the tunnels, up into the sheriff's office. I barricaded the door, but I knew it wouldn't hold them. Not if they could just slip under it, or through the cracks in the walls. The radio I'd smashed was sitting on my desk, fixed. It crackled to life. Danny, said a voice that wasn't Martinez. We've been waiting for you to understand. What are you? I asked. We've been here longer than your towns, longer than your borders. We were lonely. Now we're not. What do you want from me? Protection. Your cartel enemies are coming. Real flesh and blood coming to kill you. We can help each other. Why would I trust you? Because we're alike now. Part of you is already us. The radio went silent. I threw it against the wall again, harder this time. It shattered into pieces that looked more like wet clay than metal and plastic. That night, I got a call from my sister Maria. My real phone this time. Danny, are you okay? You called me yesterday, talking crazy about skin thieves and how I might not be me anymore. I didn't call you, I said, my heart sinking. Well, someone did. They sounded exactly like you. They knew things only you would know. Maria, listen to me. Don't trust any calls from me. Don't trust anyone who says they're me. I'll contact you through Martinez only. Understand? There was a long pause. Maria, how do I know you're really my brother right now? She asked, her voice small and scared. I didn't have an answer. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, gun in hand, watching the door. I must have dozed off, because I jerked awake to find myself sitting across the room, watching me sleep. The other me smiled, having trouble sorting it all out. I raised my gun, but my hand was shaking. Go ahead, the other me said. Shoot, if it makes you feel better. But ask yourself, which one of us is real? Are you the original Danny? Or am I? Or are we both just copies? What have you done to me? I asked. We've borrowed some of you, just little pieces, memories, feelings. We've been doing it for years actually. Following your cartel investigation, learning about both sides. The cartel, are they involved with you? The other me laughed. They don't even know we exist. They're just humans killing humans over imaginary lines in the sand. But they've been useful. Their chaos helps us grow. Grow how? Every time someone disappears in the desert, every time a body is never found. That's an opportunity for us. A new skin, a new life. My double stood up and walked to the door. The real cartel is coming for you tomorrow. 3 hitmen. We've seen them on the road. When they get here, we'll help you. We'll help you help us. Help you do what? Expand. Then he walked out the door, his movements too smooth, too fluid. I spent the rest of the night searching the sheriff's office. In a hidden safe, I found case files about Adobe Wells, reports of missing persons going back decades, tourists, hikers, border crossers, border patrol agents, vanishing near this town, and older files, from the 1920s and 30s, about mirror people seen in the desert, people reporting seeing themselves walking in the distance, or watching from windows of abandoned buildings. It's been happening for generations. These things have been here all along, watching, learning, copying, and now they've copied me. But how much of me? How deep does it go? I don't know if I can trust my own memories anymore. I keep having flashes of things I know never happened. Meetings with Varga, where I wasn't undercover but actually working for him. Training exercises with fellow agents who have the wrong faces, wrong names. Was I ever really a DEA agent? Did I actually testify against Varga? Or are those false memories too? The sun is rising now. If the skin dancers are right, the real cartel is coming today. I need to be ready. I need to know which side I'm on. But first, I need to know who I am. The hitmen came at noon. 3 black SUVs rolling into Adobe Wells, kicking up dust clouds that turned the sun red. I watched from the roof of the sheriff's office, rifle ready. I recognized 2 of the men Varga's personal guards. The third was new to me. Or was he? I had a sudden flash of memory sharing drinks with him at a bar in Juarez, laughing about something, but that never happened. I was never friendly with cartel soldiers, was I? The men spread out, moving from building to building, professional, careful, looking for me. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A fourth man stepped out. From behind the old church, he looked exactly like the new hitman, same face, same clothes. The copy walked right up behind the original and just merged with him. The hitman stumbled, shook his head like clearing water from his ears, then continued searching. They were taking them over, right in front of me. I lined up a shot on one of the hitmen, but before I could pull the trigger, I heard my own voice. Behind me, I wouldn't do that if I were you. It was my double from last night. Actually, I am you, so I know you won't. I spun around, rifle aimed at his chest. Stay back. They're not all skin dancers yet, my double said, ignoring the gun. Just Ramirez, the one you saw us take. The others are still human. For now. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what's happening. What's been happening for years. My double sat down on the roof edge, legs dangling. We've been studying both sides, law enforcement and cartels, wearing both kinds of skins, learning how you fight each other. Why? Practice. The more chaos, the easier it is for us to expand. A drug war gives us so many opportunities to replace people, to become people. A shot rang out. One of the hitmen had spotted us. My double didn't even flinch as the bullet passed through his shoulder. There was no blood, just a hole that seemed to close itself up. See, we're better than human now. Better than you. He stood up. I'll help you with these hitmen. But first, I want to show you something. Against my better judgment, I followed my double down into the sheriff's office and through a hidden door I'd somehow never noticed before. It led to a room filled with skins. Human skins hanging from hooks like suits in a closet. Some I recognize, border patrol officers, townspeople I'd seen in old photos, and there, in the center, my skin, my face, hanging empty. That's not possible, I whispered. I'm here. I'm me. Are you sure? My double asked. When was the last time you slept? Really slept? I couldn't remember. We've been borrowing parts of you for months, Danny, while you were undercover. Little pieces here and there, memories, feelings, enough to make our own, Danny. No, I backed away. I'd know if I wasn't real. Would you? How many times have you checked your skin for seams? How many memories don't quite fit? Gunshots from outside interrupted us. The hitmen were firing at something. We should go, my double said. Your friends are here. What friends? The extraction team. Martinez sent them, remember. Despite your warnings, we went back upstairs. Through the window, I could see a D-tactical team engaging with the hitmen, but something was wrong. Some of the D agents were moving strangely, to fluid, and when bullets hit them, they didn't bleed. They're not all real agents, are they? I asked. Very good, Danny. About half are skin dancers. We've been infiltrating your agency for months. I felt sick. How far does this go? Police departments across the Southwest, border patrol, local government. We're everywhere now. Why are you telling me this? Because you're special, Danny. You're the first human who's figured us out and not gone crazy. The first one who might understand us. Another memory flashed me, sitting in a dark room, watching as something that wasn't human peeled the skin from a screaming border patrol officer. But that couldn't have happened. I would remember something like that, unless they took that memory from me. I need to stop this, I said. Stop what? Us becoming human. Humans becoming us. It's too late, Danny. It's been too late for years. The firefight outside was intensifying. I saw one of the D agents take multiple shots to the chest and keep moving forward, his body jerking unnaturally with each impact. I need to warn them, I said, reaching for my backup radio. Who? The real agents. They won't believe you. Not when half their team are wearing us. Not when we have your face, your voice, your memories. I tried the radio anyway. This is Agent Restrepo. Fall back immediately. The town is compromised. Repeat, fall back now. A voice answered Martinez. Danny, what the hell is going on? I'm getting reports of you being in two places at once. Martinez, listen to me. Adobe Wells is infected with some kind of entities. They can look like anyone. They've copied me, copied other agents. Don't trust anyone who looks like me. There was a long pause. Danny, Martinez finally said, I'm looking at you right now. You're standing next to me at the command post, so who the hell am I talking to? My blood went cold. That's not me. Martinez. I'm in the sheriff's office. He's saying the same thing about you. My double smiled and held out his hand for the radio. Let me talk to him. I backed away. Stay away from me. Danny, you need to understand what's happening, my double said, still advancing. You're one of us now. Part of you is. Anyway, we've been taking little pieces of you for months. Every time you slept on your undercover assignment, every time you closed your eyes, we were there, borrowing. No, I said, but even as I denied it, more false memories were surfacing, meetings with shadowy figures in the desert, agreements I never made, people I never met but somehow knew. Think about it, Danny. How did you end up in Adobe Wells? Of all places, this forgotten town. Who suggested it as your hiding place? Martinez had said it was remote, safe, off the grid. Martinez is one of us, my double said. Has been. For years, he sent you here to us. A gift. The radio crackled again. Danny, Martinez's voice said, stay where you are. I'm coming to you. Don't trust him, I told myself. But which me was I talking to? I looked down at my hands. Were those my hands? I couldn't be sure anymore. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. The skin dancers had won. Now they'd be wearing cartel skins and D-skins, gathering more identities, more memories, more of me. What am I? I asked my double, my voice barely a whisper. You're the bridge, Danny, he said. Half human, half us. The first successful merge. I raised my gun, pointing it at my double's head. And if I pull this trigger, you'll just be shooting yourself. I turned the gun toward my own head. That won't work either, my double said. You can't kill what's already been taken. The door to the sheriff's office burst open. Martinez walked in, flanked by 2 agents, but all 3 had that too fluid way of moving. Hello, Danny, Martinez said. Both of you, it's time to come home. I ran, down the back stairs of the sheriff's office, into the tunnels beneath the town. I could hear them behind me, footsteps that didn't quite sound right. Too light, too quick. The skin dancers wearing Martinez and the other agents, wearing me. The tunnels were dark, but I knew them well by now. I'd spent days mapping them, finding all the exits, the dead ends, the hidden rooms. I made my way to an old storage cellar, beneath what used to be a hardware store, a place I'd stocked with emergency supplies. As I fumbled in the dark for my flashlight, a hand grabbed my wrist. I nearly screamed before a voice whispered, "Quiet, Agent they'll hear you." I jerked away, raising my gun. Who's there? A match flared, illuminating a face I recognized. Javier Mendez, Vargas' lieutenant. The man I'd seen die 6 months ago. The man I'd also seen talking in the tunnels yesterday. You're one of them, I hissed, keeping my gun aimed at his head. No. Mendez shook his head. I'm the real Mendez. That's impossible. You died in my arms after the warehouse shootout. That wasn't me. That was one of them wearing me. He lit a lantern, revealing 3 other people in the cellar, 2 men and a woman, all looking scared and exhausted, like they're wearing Varga now, like they're wearing half your D friends. I kept my gun steady. Prove you're human. Mendez pulled up his sleeve and drew a knife across his forearm. Red blood welled up, not the clear, sticky substance I'd seen when the skin dancers were injured. They bleed too, I said. Not like humans, not for as long, and they heal too fast. He nodded at my gun. Shoot me in the leg if you want. I won't heal like they do. I lowered my gun, but kept it ready. How are you alive? I saw you die. They took me weeks before that shootout. Kept me alive while one of them wore my skin, my life. I escaped during a transfer. He gestured to the others. We all did. We're what's left of the real cartel leadership, the ones they haven't fully replaced yet. Why should I trust you? You're still cartel, because right now, Agent, we have the same enemy. Mendez sat down on a crate. They've been playing, both sides, law enforcement and cartels, creating chaos, using our war to expand their numbers. The woman spoke up. They need the violence. Every dead body is a potential new skin. Every missing person is a chance for them to make a copy. It made a horrible kind of sense. The drug war had claimed thousands of lives along the border, thousands of opportunities for the skin dancers to expand. What do they want? I asked. To be us, Mendez said simply. They're ancient things, desert spirits that watched humans for centuries, wanting what we had, wanting to be alive. But they're not really alive, one of the other men said. They're just ... wearing life like a costume. How do we stop them? I asked. Mendez exchanged glances with the others. We found something. Old Tohono writings about the skin thieves. They call them Botch Mumsa, hungry ghosts. The stories say they can be destroyed if their original skins are burned. Their collection room, I said, remembering the chamber of hanging skins. In the sheriff's office, we need to destroy that room, Mendez said. All of it, the entire collection. They'll be guarding it. Yes, and they'll be wearing our faces. Your faces. Mendez looked grim. You won't know who's real and who's not until it's too late. We spent hours planning. The cartel survivors knew ways to hurt the skin dancers' fire. Mainly extreme heat damaged them enough that they couldn't maintain human form. They also knew the dancers couldn't perfectly mimic human behavior under stress. They made mistakes, moved wrong, spoke strangely. As dawn approached, we gathered our weapons guns, homemade flamethrowers using aerosol cans, and plenty of matches and lighters. There's something you should know, Mendez said, as we prepared to leave. About you. What about me? I asked, though I already suspected. The real Danny Restrepo died 2 weeks ago. During the trial preparation, I felt the world tilt. That's not possible. I'm me. I remember everything. They've gotten better at making copies, using the real person's memories, feelings. Mendez looked almost sympathetic. The Danny that testified against Varga. That was one of them. Use single quotes re ... another version. No, I said, but even as I denied it, I knew it might be true. The conflicting memories, the lost time, the sense that something about me wasn't right. I'm sorry, Mendez said, but if we destroy their skin collection, you'll die too. All their copies were. I thought about that as we moved through the tunnels toward the sheriff's office. If I wasn't the real Danny, what was I? A copy, a ghost, or something in between, the bridge between human and skin dancer, as my double had called me. Did it matter? We emerged into the early morning light to find Adobe Wells unnervingly quiet. No sign of Martinez or the other agents. No sign of my double. They're waiting for us, the woman whispered. They know we're coming. We split up, Mendez and I heading for the front of the sheriff's office, the others circling around to the back. As we approached, I saw familiar faces watching from windows. The agents I'd worked with for years. My fellow officers, my friends, or things wearing their skins. Danny Martinez called from the front door. Come on in, we've been waiting for you. Beside him stood my double, smiling that too wide smile. We don't want to hurt you, my double said. Any of you. We just want to live. By stealing our lives, I called back. By sharing them, Martinez said. We can all exist together. Us in you, you in us. Tell that to the real Martinez, I said. The one you killed and skinned. Martinez's face twitched. He wasn't using his life well. We are. That's when Mendez gave the signal a sharp whistle. The back of the sheriff's office erupted in flames as the others threw their homemade firebombs through the windows. Everything happened at once. The skin dancers poured out of the building, their human disguises slipping as they panicked. I saw agents' faces melt like wax, revealing smooth, featureless things underneath. Martinez lunged at me, his movements all wrong, too jerky and too fluid at the same time. I shot him in the chest. He kept coming. I shot him again and again. He staggered but didn't fall. You can't kill us like that, he hissed, his voice no longer sounding like Martinez. Mendez tossed me a lighter and an aerosol can. I made a flamethrower and aimed it at Martinez. The fire caught him full in the face. He screamed a sound no human throat could make, fell to the ground, his skin bubbling and peeling away. We fought our way into the burning building, toward the hidden door leading to the skin collection. My double appeared in front of me, blocking the way. You're making a mistake, Danny, he said. You're one of us now. If you destroy the collection, you destroy yourself. Maybe, I said, but I'll save everyone else. My double's face twisted. In anger, he charged me, moving faster than any human could. We crashed to the floor, rolling dangerously close to the spreading flames. His hands closed around my throat, hands that looked exactly like mine. We could have been gods, he hissed, wearing humanity like a glove. I couldn't break his grip. Black spots danced in my vision. With my last strength, I reached into my pocket for my lighter. I flicked it on and pressed it against my double's arm. He screamed and let go, his skin sizzling where the flame touched it. I scrambled away, gasping for breath. The hidden door to the skin collection had sprung open in the heat of the fire. Inside, the hanging skins were starting to smolder. My double saw it too and lunged for the room, trying to save them. "No," he screamed. I tackled him from behind, sending us both crashing into the room of skins. The fire followed us in, catching on the dry, leathery hides. They went up like paper. My double howled, a sound of pure anguish. Around us, the skins blackened and curled. I felt a strange sensation like parts of me were burning too. Memories flaking away like ash, pieces of my mind going dark. "You've killed us," my double whispered as his skin began to bubble and melt. "You've killed yourself. Better that than letting you spread," I gasped, feeling a burning pain inside, my chest that had nothing to do with the actual fire. The last thing I saw before the ceiling collapsed was my own skin, the one hanging in the center of the room, catching fire and turning to ash. I woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later. Mendez was sitting beside me, his arm bandaged. "You're alive," he said, sounding surprised. "How?" My voice was raspy from smoke and disuse. "We don't know. By all accounts, you should have died. When the collection burned, all their other copies did." I tried to sort through my memories. Some were clear: my childhood, my training, my undercover work. Others were foggy or completely gone. Still others felt like they'd happened to someone else. "What am I?" I asked. Mendez shrugged. "The doctors say you're human. Your blood, your DNA, it's all human. But, double quotes, but what? The things you survived. No normal person could have lived through that fire, those injuries." I looked down at my arms. No burns, no scars, just smooth skin that somehow felt both familiar and strange. The skin dancers gone, as far as we can tell. When the collection burned, all their copies just fell apart, turned to dust. Mendez leaned forward. "But we can't be sure we got them all. There could be more collections in other places." I nodded slowly. "And the authorities? How did you explain all this? Gas explosion, tragic accident, during a de-operation?" He smiled thinly. "Some stories are too strange for official reports." He got up to leave, then paused at the door. "Restrepo, whatever you are now, you saved a lot of lives. Remember that." After he left, I stood up and went to the bathroom mirror. My face looked the same. My eyes, my scars, all me. But as I stared at my reflection, I could have sworn I saw something move beneath my skin. Just for a second, a ripple, a shift. I blinked, and it was gone. I'm still me. I think. My name is Vincent Kowalski, but everyone back in Pittsburgh called me Vinny. I'm 38 years old, and just lost everything when the steel mill shut down. 20 years working those furnaces, and what do I have to show for it? A bad back, calloused hands, and an eviction notice. That's why I'm here in Perdition Creek, a ghost town tucked away in the Colorado Rockies, where nobody's lived since. 1892. The place is falling apart, broken windows, rotting wood, and silence. So much silence after the noise of Pittsburgh. I brought everything I own in my old pickup truck, mining equipment, tools, and every last dollar of my life savings. My dad always said there was still gold in these mountains. The big companies took what was easy to find, but they missed the hidden veins. At least that's what I need to believe. The town gives me the creeps, if I'm being honest. The way it sits in this narrow valley, surrounded by tall pines that block out the sun by mid-afternoon, and those stories about the whole town disappearing. Overnight, back in 1892, everyone just gone, meals still on tables, clothes still hanging to dry. I found a decent spot to set up camp in what used to be the assayer's office, the guy who would weigh and test miners' gold. The old wooden desk makes a good workbench, and the stone walls keep out the worst of the mountain chill at night. My first day digging, I couldn't believe my luck. I barely scratched the surface near an old mine entrance, and there it was, a gold nugget, just sitting in the dirt like someone had dropped it there. Pure gold, too, not mixed with other minerals, like you'd expect, just sitting there waiting for me. The second day, I found 3 more nuggets. By the end of my first week, I had more gold than most miners find in a year. That's when the park ranger showed up. Tall guy, weathered face, like he'd spent his whole life in these mountains. He didn't introduce himself, just stood at the edge of my camp watching me work. "You should leave," he finally said. "Feeding season's coming." "Feeding season?" I asked. "For what?" "Every 66 years, he said, not really answering. "Last time was 1892. Do the math." Then he just walked away. disappeared into the trees before I could ask what he meant. I found an old trunk that night, hidden under floorboards in the assayer's office. Inside were mining claims from the 1800s, showing gold yields that seemed impossible, and a yellowed newspaper from 1892 with a headline that made my skin crawl: Miners Report Living Gold. The article talked about gold nuggets that seemed to move on their own and strange sounds coming from deep in the mines. I should have packed up right then, should have listened to that ranger. But what was I supposed to do? Go back to Pittsburgh with nothing, live in my truck until winter came? My family needed that gold. My daughter's college fund wasn't going to fill itself. So I set up a routine: wake at dawn, dig until dusk, clean and fix equipment in the evening, and try to ignore the feeling that something was watching me from the trees. Try to forget about that headline. Try not to notice how the gold sometimes seemed warm to the touch, like it was alive. I told myself it was all worth it. With each nugget I pulled from the ground, I was one step closer to giving my family the life they deserved. But at night, in the quiet darkness of that ghost town, I'd hear sounds coming from deep in the abandoned mine shafts. Sounds like breathing, like something big was sleeping down there, waiting to wake up. And sometimes, when I held a piece of gold up to the lantern light, I swear I could see it pulse, just slightly, like it had its own heartbeat. I started noticing strange things about the gold during my second week at Perdition Creek. One morning, I set 3 nuggets on my workbench while I cleaned my tools. When I turned back, they weren't where I left them. They had moved about an inch to the left. I thought maybe the table was uneven, but when I put a marble down, it didn't roll. Then I saw it happen. I was writing in my journal, and from the corner of my eye, I caught a nugget sliding across the wooden surface. Just a tiny movement, like something was pulling it with an invisible string. When I looked directly at it, it stopped. I told myself I was just tired. Working from sunrise to sunset will play tricks on your mind. But then the animals started coming. First it was just a few birds landing near where I kept my gold. Then squirrels, then deer. They'd stand perfectly still, staring at my gold pouch like they were in some kind of trance. One morning, I found a fox sitting by my tent, waiting. When I came out, it didn't run away. It just stared at me with glassy eyes until I put my gold in my pocket. Then it walked away like nothing happened. I started keeping gold on me all the time. It felt safer that way. But that's when things got really weird. I caught my reflection in a puddle one day and barely recognized myself. My face looked thinner, my cheeks hollow, even though I'd been eating plenty. I pulled up my shirt and could count my ribs. But I didn't feel sick, in fact. I felt stronger than ever. One evening, my pickaxe handle broke. Without thinking, I grabbed both pieces and squeezed them back together so hard that they somehow fused. I stood there for a long time, staring at my hands. No normal person could do that. The gold was changing me, and it was changing the animals too. I saw a deer eating tiny flakes of gold that had washed downstream from my digging site. The next day, that same deer I recognized, its crooked antler jumped clean over a 20-foot ravine like it was nothing. One night, I woke to the sound of something big moving through the trees around my camp. Something much bigger than a deer or even a bear. When I shined my flashlight into the darkness, I caught a glimpse of what looked like a massive, hairy figure, at least 8 feet tall. It disappeared before I could get a good look, but the image stuck with me. The ranger hadn't come back, but I was starting to understand what he meant about feeding season. The worst part was how the gold felt when I held it. If I kept a nugget in my hand for more than a few minutes, I could feel it pulsing, like it had its own heartbeat. Sometimes it seemed to beat in time with mine. I started finding veins of gold that ran through the rock in strange patterns. Not random like they should be, but organized like some kind of writing or map. They all seemed to point deeper into the mountain, to the main mine shaft that I hadn't explored yet. One morning, I watched a rabbit hop right up to the entrance of that shaft, then just sit there, waiting. A few minutes later, a large shadow moved inside the darkness, and the rabbit was gone. It didn't run away. It didn't make a sound. It was just ... taken. That night, I dreamed about the gold. In my dream, it wasn't metal at all. It was something alive, something ancient that had been here long before people ever came to these mountains. Something that was hungry. I woke up clutching a nugget so hard it had left an imprint in my palm. The imprint glowed faintly golden in the dark, like the gold had gotten under my skin. I knew I should leave, pack up my truck and never look back. But every time I thought about leaving the gold behind, my chest would tighten and I'd break into a cold sweat. The thought of being away from it was worse than whatever might be waiting in that mine shaft. So I stayed, and I kept digging, and I tried not to think about how the gold looked more and more like tiny, golden eggs rather than metal, or how the animals were practically lining up to enter that dark mine shaft, like they were offering themselves to whatever lived inside. I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed possible, but something told me the price might be higher than I was willing to pay. I knew I'd have to go into the main mine shaft eventually. That's where the biggest gold deposits would be. I'd been putting it off, working the smaller veins outside, but those were starting to run dry. So one morning, I grabbed my headlamp, pick, and a day's worth of food and water. As I approached the dark opening in the mountainside, the air got colder. My breath came out in white puffs. It was summer, but it felt like winter at the mouth of that cave. Just a few hours, I told myself. Just see what's down there, then come back up. The tunnel sloped down gently at first, then steeper. Old wooden supports, rotted with age, lined the walls. The miners who built this place knew what they were doing. The tunnel was tall enough for me to stand upright, wide enough for carts to roll through. About an hour in, my headlamp caught something ahead, a flash of movement, something big. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed back, but nothing else. I kept going, the weight of the mountain pressing down from above. The air got thicker, harder to breathe, and then the tunnel opened up into a massive underground cavern. My headlamp couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls. It was like being outside at night, but under tons of rock. And there, in the middle of the cavern floor, stood the biggest creature I'd ever seen. It was shaped like a man, but wrong. Too tall, at least 15 feet. Its body was covered in thick, matted fur, and its arms hung down past its knees. But its eyes, they were human eyes, but glowing golden in the dark, fixed right on me. I should have run, should have turned and climbed back up that tunnel as fast as I could. But I couldn't move. Those golden eyes held me in place. The creature took a step forward. The ground shook. Then another step. It stopped about 20 feet away, looking down at me. "Vincent Kowalski," it said, its voice deep and rough, like stones grinding together. It knew my name. "What are you?" I managed to ask, my own voice barely a whisper. "Caretaker," it said, "like you will be." More movement in the darkness. Two more creatures, just as big, emerged from the shadows. They formed a circle around me, but didn't come closer. "We've been watching you," the first one said. "You work hard, you understand sacrifice." I found my voice again. "What do you want from me?" The creature held out its massive hand. In its palm was a piece of gold, bigger than any I'd found, pulsing with a soft light. "Partnership," it said. "We help you mine gold. You help us feed the source." The source. The creature stepped aside, revealing a pit in the center of the cavern. The pit glowed with the same golden light as the nugget in the creature's hand. Something moved down there, something huge, pulsing like a giant heart. "It makes the gold," the creature said. "Has made gold since before your kind walked upright. It needs to feed." "Feed on what?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. The creature pointed to a side tunnel I hadn't noticed before. "Come see." I followed, my legs moving without me telling them to. The tunnel led to a smaller cave with a pool of golden liquid in the center. Around the edges of the pool were people, or what used to be people. Their skin was partly golden, hardened in places like metal. They were still alive, their chests rising and falling slowly. "The miners," the creature said. "From 1892, they feed the source with their life force. The source gives gold in return." One of the miners turned his head toward me. His face was half flesh, half gold, frozen in a look of pain and wonder. "Every 66 years, the creature continued, we need new feeders. The old ones are almost used." Up, I backed away, bumping into the wall behind me. "I'm not going to be your feeder." The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You already are. The gold in your pocket, in your blood now. Part of you already belongs to the source." It was right. I could feel the gold inside me, warm and alive, pulsing with each heartbeat. "The source is ancient," the creature said. "Older than your civilization. It sleeps, it wakes, it feeds, it sleeps again. Its cycle is 66 years. You came just in time." "And what are you?" I asked. What are these ... things? I pointed at the half-golden miners. We were like you once, the creature said. Miners from cycles past. The source changed us, made us its guardians. We find new feeders when the time comes. It reached out and touched a nearby rock wall. Under its fingers, the stone turned to gold, spreading outward in veins. We can show you how to do this, it said. How to find gold anywhere. How to make more than you ever dreamed possible. In exchange for what? I asked. Help us find more feeders, it said, when the time comes. I thought about the ranger's warning, about the newspaper headline, about the animals offering themselves to whatever lived down here. The gold enhances, the creature said, seeing my hesitation makes you stronger, faster, healthier. You've noticed already, but it also changes, slowly converts flesh to something better, something that lasts. I thought about how thin I'd gotten, how I could bend metal with my bare hands now. What if I say no? I asked. All three creatures stared at me with those golden eyes. No one says no. The first one said simply, the gold calls. You answer, or you become like them. It pointed to the half-transformed miners. You have choice now, it continued. Later, no choice. Better to join willingly, less pain. I looked at the miners again, at their frozen faces. Then at the gold nuggets in my pocket. I'd come too far to turn back now. Maybe there was still a way out of this, if I played along for now. What do I need to do? I asked. The creature's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. For now, just mine, it said. We will show you where. The richest veins, more gold than you can carry. And later, you help bring others. The source needs many feeders for the next cycle. The creatures led me back to the main cavern, to the pit with the pulsing golden thing. Up close, I could see it wasn't one organism, but many. Like a giant colony of golden cells all working together, growing, spreading. This is the source, the creature said. Feel its power. The golden light washed over me, and with it came a wave of knowledge. I suddenly knew where every vein of gold ran through the mountain. Could feel them like they were extensions of my own body. And somewhere deep in that knowledge was a hunger, ancient and patient, waiting to be fed. I knew, then I was in real trouble. But the gold in my blood sang at being so close to its source, and part of me, a growing part, didn't want to leave at all. The creatures kept their promise. They showed me where to dig, and the gold came easily, more than I could have. Found in 10 lifetimes of normal mining. I filled bucket after bucket, day after day. But the changes in my body were getting harder to ignore. It started with thin golden lines under my skin, like veins but the wrong color. They showed up first on my hands and arms, spreading slowly up toward my shoulders. When I touched them, they felt warm, normal. The creature, the one I now called first, told me when I showed him, the gold becomes part of you. You become part of it. Were you really human once? I asked him one day, as we stood at the entrance to a new tunnel they'd shown me. First nodded his massive head. Many cycles ago, gold miners, like you. How many cycles? I was born in 1694. First said, found this place in 1727. My name was Thomas Reed. I tried to imagine this huge fur-covered monster as a normal man, swinging a pickaxe over 200 years ago. The others, I asked, nodding toward the two creatures that always seemed to be watching from a distance. Samuel came in 1793. First said, Jacob in 1826. There were more, but they, moved on, where? First just pointed down, toward where the source pulsed in its pit. I worked harder, trying to ignore the golden veins that now reached my chest. My hair was falling out in clumps, replaced by something coarser, and I could sense gold now, not just in the mountain, but miles away. I could close my eyes and point to deposits I'd never seen, feeling them like distant heartbeats. You're changing faster than most, First told me. The source favors you. I didn't feel favored. I felt scared, but also powerful. I could lift boulders now that would have taken 3 men before, could see in almost total darkness, could hear animals moving through the forest from a mile away, and I could call them. If I focused on a deer or bear in the distance, it would come to me, walking straight to the mine entrance like it was in a trance. What happens to the animals? I asked first, after I'd watched a mountain lion walk willingly into the deeper tunnels. They feed the source, he said. But animals are not enough. Not for the big feeding that comes soon. I understood then why they needed me. Not just to dig gold, but to bring people here. The thought made me sick, but part of me, the part that was more gold than flesh now, saw the logic of it. The source was hungry. It had been 66 years since its last big meal. The miners from 1892 were almost used up. I was starting to hear the source in my head now. Not words exactly, but feelings, images. It showed me how to use the gold to make people come to Perdition Creek, how to send out letters, make phone calls, spread rumors about easy money. And sometimes, when I was asleep, I'd see memories that weren't mine. Flashes of other mining, operations, other feeding cycles, men in old-fashioned clothes digging frantically for gold. The same creatures, younger, fewer, watching from the shadows. The same pit, the same source, always hungry. I saw first as a human, then his slow change into what he was now. Saw the others change too. Saw how each of them had fought, first, then accepted, then embraced their new role. One morning, I woke up and couldn't recognize my reflection in the small mirror I kept. My face was thinner, sharper. My eyes had flecks of gold in them. My skin was harder, almost metallic. In places I tried to leave that day, packed what little I still cared about and started walking toward my truck. But I only made it about 100 yards from the mine entrance before the pain started. Like my blood was on fire, burning me from the inside. I fell to my knees, gasping. First found me there, curled up on the ground. "You cannot leave," he said, not unkindly. "The gold in your blood needs to be near the source now. Too far away and it will burn through you." He helped me back to my camp. The pain eased with each step closer to the mine. "You are bound now," first said, "like we all are." That night, the source spoke to me directly for the first time. Not in words, but in clear images that filled my mind. It showed me how to bring people to Perdition Creek, how to lure them with promises of easy gold. I realized then that my own discovery hadn't been luck. The creatures first and the others had manipulated events, left gold where I would find it, made sure rumors reached me in Pittsburgh about untapped veins in the Rockies. "You were chosen," first confirmed when I confronted him. "We watched you in the steel mill, saw your desperation when it closed, knew you would come if shown the way. You used me," I said. "We gave you purpose," first replied. "Would you rather be homeless in Pittsburgh?" I couldn't argue. Even with everything that was happening to me, I had more money now than I'd ever dreamed of. I'd been sending cash to my family, enough to buy back our house and more. But I hadn't told them where I was, hadn't invited them to visit. Some part of me, still human, was protecting them from this place. The changes kept coming. My skin hardened more. Each day, the coarse hair grew thicker. I was taller now, had to duck to enter my tent, and my connection to the source grew stronger. When I held a piece of gold now, I could feel every molecule of it, could reshape it with my thoughts. First, showed me how to transmute things, turning ordinary rock to gold with just a touch, though it drained me to do it. "Soon you will be able to change living things too," he said. "That is when you know the transformation is nearly complete." I thought of the half-golden miners in the pool. Was that my fate? Or would I become, like first, a towering first-covered guardian of the source? Either way, I was losing my humanity piece by piece, and the worst part was, less and less of me cared. I don't know exactly when I sent the letters. The days had started to blur together, time flowing strangely in Perdition Creek, but I must have done it, because one morning I heard the rumble of trucks coming up the mountain road. I was in the mine when First appeared beside me, his golden eyes gleaming in the darkness. "They're here," he said. "The new feeders." My stomach twisted. Part of me, the human part that was getting smaller every day, wanted to run to the entrance, to warn them away. But the other part, the part that pulsed with gold, wanted to watch them discover what I had discovered, wanted to see their faces when they found their first nuggets. "What do I do?" I asked First. "Watch," he said. "Learn. Soon it will be your role to guide them." I followed him through the tunnels to a hidden opening in the rocks. From there, we could see my camp and the road beyond. 3 pickup trucks had parked nearby. Men and women were unloading equipment, shovels, pickaxes, pans, just like I had brought. 6, First counted. Good number. "The source will be pleased." "What will happen to them?" I asked, though I already knew. "Same as happened to the miners in 1892. Same as is happening to you. They will feed the source, become part of the cycle." I watched them set up their camps. They looked excited, hopeful. just like I had been. I should warn them, I said. First put a massive hand on my shoulder. His touch was like iron. You could, he said. But think what would happen. They would not believe you, would think you are trying to keep the gold for yourself. And even if they did believe, they would bring others, authorities, scientists. The source would be discovered, studied, maybe destroyed. All of us with it, including you. You feel the connection now. If the source dies, you die. He was right. I could feel the source's life force flowing through my veins, mixed with my blood. We were connected now in a way that couldn't be broken. That night, I watched from the shadows as the newcomers built campfires and talked excitedly about the gold they would find. I had left samples near the surface, where they would discover them easily, just as had been done for me. In the morning, I retreated deeper into the mine as they began exploring. By noon, I heard their shouts of excitement. They had found their first nuggets. "It's working," First said, appearing beside me. "Now we wait." But something was bothering me. "The ranger," I said. "The one who warned me when I first arrived. Who was he?" First nodded. "Jacob's work. He can still pass as human for short periods. We always send a warning. It would not be fair otherwise." "Fair?" I almost laughed. "How is any of this fair?" "Everyone has a choice," First said. "You were warned. You chose to stay. They will be warned too, in their own way. Some might leave. Most won't." Over the next few days, I watched the newcomers from hiding, saw them find more gold, saw the animals begin to approach them in that trance-like state, saw them notice the strange things about the gold, how it moved, how it felt warm to the touch. One of them, a woman about my age, seemed more cautious than the others. She kept looking at the mine entrance with suspicion, holding back while the others ventured deeper. "She might leave," First observed. "We should not let that happen." "What do you mean?" I asked. "The feeding cycle has begun. The source has awakened fully. Look outside." I hadn't been above ground in days. When I climbed to a viewpoint where I could see the valley, I was shocked. Dark clouds had gathered over Perdition Creek, circling like a slow whirlpool. The air felt charged, heavy. "The source controls the weather during feeding times," First explained. "No one leaves now." That night, a storm like I'd never seen hit the mountain. Lightning struck continuously, and rain fell in sheets. The roads would be washed out, the valley cut off. The next morning, the cautious woman was packing her things, trying to leave despite the storm. I watched her from the trees, my body now so changed that she wouldn't recognize me as human if she saw me. She got in her truck, but it wouldn't start. Tried the others' trucks, same problem. Something about the storm, or maybe the source itself, had disabled them. She started walking instead, heading down the mountain road on foot. I followed, keeping to the shadows. She made it about a mile before she collapsed, clutching her chest. I could see it from where I hid, thin lines of gold spreading under her skin. She had handled enough gold already. It was in her blood. I carried her back to the camp while she was unconscious. When the others found her by their fire, they assumed she had changed her mind about leaving. Days passed. The newcomers ventured deeper into the mines, found the main cavern, met the creatures. I watched it all, just as First instructed. One by one they began to change, just as I had, golden veins spreading under their skin, new strength in their limbs, the ability to sense gold deposits, and I continued to change too. I was nearly as tall as First now, my skin hardened to a golden shell in places, thick hair covering my body. My voice had deepened to a rumble that made the ground shake. The source spoke to me constantly now, showing me its plans. How the feeding network spread across the continent through underground veins of gold. How each feeding site awakened in its own cycle, staggered so that the source could feed continuously, and the ultimate plan to eventually transform all humans into gold producers, to make the entire earth a feeding ground. One night, as the newcomers slept, I tried to rebel. Tried to block the tunnel that led to the source, piled rocks, support, beams, anything I could find. But as I worked, pain shot through my body. My thoughts became clouded, confused. I realized the source was in my mind now, could control my actions if it wanted to. First found me there, on my knees in front of my pathetic barricade. "We all try to fight it," he said, helping me up. "I did too, once. So did Samuel and Jacob." "Is there no way out?" I asked. "There is a choice," First said. "Become a willing guardian, like me, or be forced to transform fully, like the miners in the pool. The source needs both guardians to find new feeders, and direct feeders to sustain it. What kind of choice is that? The only one left to you, First said. But before you decide, he led me to a small cave I hadn't seen before. Inside was a wooden desk with a single drawer. First opened it and pulled out a leather book. My diary, he said. From when I was human. Read. I took the book with hands that barely looked like mine anymore. Opened it to a page that first indicated, I face an impossible choice. I read aloud. Become a willing servant to this thing, or lose my mind entirely. I tell myself that if I choose to serve, I might find a way to destroy it later. But I know this is a lie I tell myself. Once I choose, there will be no turning back. I looked up at First. You went through the same thing. He nodded. Every guardian does. Read more. I turned the page. The cycle is perfect. Even as I write this, planning my rebellion, I know I have thought these thoughts before. Time moves differently here. What feels like my first cycle may be my 100th. The source has shown me visions of myself making this same choice again and again across the centuries. A chill ran through me. Is this true? Have I been here before? The source exists partly outside normal time, First said. In its perception, all cycles happen at once. What feels like your first time here may not be. I thought about the flashes of memory I'd been having, the familiar feelings when I first arrived, the sense that I somehow knew what would happen next. So no matter what I choose, I've chosen it before, and will choose it again. Now you understand, First said. The cycle is eternal. The only real choice is how you experience it. I closed the book. If I become a guardian, what happens? You finish your transformation, gain control over it, rather than letting it control you. Help find new feeders every 66 years. Between cycles, you sleep, age slowly, guard the source. And if I refuse, you join the miners in the pool. Your consciousness remains, but you have no control. You feed the source directly until you are used up. Neither option seemed good, but one offered some measure of freedom, of dignity. How long? I asked. How long would I live as a guardian? I have existed for almost 300 years, First said. Samuel nearly as long. Jacob less. Some guardians eventually choose to join the source directly. Some are used up naturally. None die as humans understand death. I looked at my golden-veined hands, at the creature I was becoming. I accept, I said finally. I'll be a guardian. First nodded. A wise choice. The transformation will complete soon. Then your first duty will be to send messages about the gold here. For the next cycle, but that's 66 years from now, I said. First made a sound like rocks grinding together, his version of a laugh. For the source, and soon for you, 66 years will feel like days, he said. Time flows differently during feeding seasons. What seems like weeks to you has been months to the outside world. Years will pass in what feels like weeks. I thought about my family in Pittsburgh. They would have received my money, but no word from me in what must seem like a very long time. Would they look for me? Would anyone? They will forget, First said, reading my thoughts, or convince themselves you moved on. Humans are good at explaining away what they don't understand. That night, as the storm continued to rage outside, I made my peace with what I was becoming, accepted the gold flowing through my veins, the changes to my body, embraced the connection to the source. The transformation completed faster after that. By morning, I stood as tall as First, my skin a patchwork of flesh and golden metal, my voice deep enough to shake dust from the tunnel ceiling, and I could feel them all now. First Samuel, Jacob, the newcomers, the miners in the pool, all connected to the source, all part of the eternal cycle of feeding and growing. My first task as a guardian was simple. First handed me a stack of letters addressed to mining companies and desperate individuals across the country. For the next cycle, he said, to be sent in 66 years. I looked at the letters, written in what used to be my handwriting. Tales of incredible gold deposits, easy money, a chance at a new life. The same lies that had brought me here. I put the letters in the wooden desk, in the drawer next to First's diary. Then I followed him deeper into the mine, to where the source pulsed in its pit. The newcomers were there, already half transformed, working tirelessly to expand the tunnels, to find more gold, to feed the hunger that now drove us all. As I looked at them, I felt a strange sort of peace. The cycle would continue, with or without me. But at least this way, I had some control over my fate, some purpose in the endless feeding seasons to come, and somewhere deep in my mind, I could hear the source whispering of the next cycle, and the next, stretching out into a golden eternity.